his absence for a couple minutes.
How about till 6:25? That gives us 7 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, let's see, who did not receive?
Who's our design guy?
Who else is missing the addendum? You have yours.
I have mine,
Okay.
yeah.
Dan, sorry, but we missed you. Bill, you have yours? Yeah. Dave, you need one?
Yes, sir.
You didn't get your...
I have mine. That's yours.
Yeah, oh yeah. I got two.
reconvene then. And we're back to agenda item 7, dealing with the E-zone master plan amendment to the redevelopment plan. And Reed, I take 7A to be a separate review and comment and approval process than 7. Is that how you?
That's correct. These are
Okay.
two different steps.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yes, sir.
All right, Jason, are you presenting?
Yes.
Go for it.
Okay. This is the E-zone master plan, the redevelopment plan amendments that we had a brief introduction to it last month to give you a brief overview of where we are going with the plan amendments so we can incorporate some of the concepts that are in the E-zone master plan into our redevelopment plan so that we'll be able, the CRA would be then able to spend CRA dollars on implementing the elements of the E-zone master plan. So what you have this month, you actually have the crossed out and underlined version of the document of the changes. Also, what's been handed out to you are some suggested revised language based on some feedback that we've already had. When I go through the presentation, I'll be stopping and pointing out where we're making a few changes from the plan document you got in your packet. So with that, I'll just kind of take you through the basic structure of the changes that we're doing. This follows what I discussed last month. Right off the bat, in the introduction, there is a amendment to just kind of describe what these, or there's a change to the plan to describe what the 2011 amendments are. You know, it was probably in just a quick writing of it, it didn't quite reflect what we were trying to do. So what you have handed out to you under 2011 amendments is some revised language that kind of pulls in some language from the E-zone master plan, talks about it as a concept, and basically just and then instead of using the word authorized, talks more about the amendments to allow the expenditure of tax increment funds for those capital projects are consistent or implement the E-zone. So I'm hoping that will satisfy any concerns that the board may have what was on page 1 of the document.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to take these as Jason presents them or wait till the end? I mean, procedurally, how do we
I think I
wanna
want Jason to go through his presentation, and then my concept is that we will do a roundtable general discussion, get public feedback, and then come back with specific requested revisions, board member by board member, before we proceed to a vote. So it's going to be kind of a 2 or 3 layer process here on this.
That's good. Okay. I'll continue on just summarizing some of the changes. When you look on page 2, it's under section 3 of the document, the summary of blight conditions. The previous plan had specifically laid out all the blight study right there in the report. What we have done as a practice, some of the other redevelopment plans, continuing this on with this document, is basically what you see is a cut and paste. Those specifics have been moved back to appendix. So what you see is underlined back in appendix B is not new text, that is just moved text. And that's the blight study as it was in 1980. And we can't change what's the historic record of what was in 1980. The next changes, the original plan had what we called program objectives in section 4. That has now been changed to what's called, just gives the broad redevelopment goals. And it pulls in language, again, I kind of pulled some language that we've been using in some of our other plans that just kind of gives you the broad redevelopment goals. These are adopted policies. And so, again, these are in our other plans. They just describe the broad overview of our redevelopment goals. The one goal I think that has some concerns, doesn't quite fit what we're trying to do in the Main Street, is the mention if you look on page 3, the second bullet talks about affordable housing opportunities. You'll see on the document I handed out, under goals is a proposed change, but it basically strikes that language about affordable housing. In conferring with legal, one of the issues that went on is when the redevelopment district was first put in, we didn't have to have, there was no mention of affordable housing as part of the state enabling legislation for redevelopment areas. At some point later, the state changed that language that you do have to deal with affordable housing and redevelopment areas. It has become our understanding that since we existed prior to that language in the state legislation being put in, and the nature of this amendment, we really are not required to deal with affordable housing. So we're just going to strike that and just deal with what I think what we all want to do is to promote the mixed income nature of the redevelopment area. Okay, then continuing on in page 4, the document includes the document in section 5, these are now the redevelopment strategic objectives. Again, this is continuing on the pattern that's set by our other redevelopment plans, and it gets into specific objectives. Our other redevelopment plans have objectives, and also what we have in our comp plan as it relates to the redevelopment element, we have economic development objectives, and what has been incorporated on page 4 and 5 is economic development objectives. Many of these are similar to already adopted policies, either relate to the comp plan or what's in other redevelopment plans. And again, this basically gives us the policies in terms of how we can spend our money to do targeted loans. Later on in this agenda, we're going to be talking about our grant and loan programs. These are the policies that enable us to spend those kind of monies on loan and grant programs in the redevelopment area. The one change that has been made, suggested change again, is to policy 5.1.5 is just to clarify that this policy in terms of tax increment financing is for those key catalyst development projects, not just any development project in the area. So that again just kind of further specifies what that's for. And then another change from what was in your original document, probably by my error in writing this and looking at the E-zone, policy 5.1.8 kind of combined two aspects of things we're trying to do in the redevelopment. Probably for better clarification is to split that out. So what you see in what's handed out to you is 5.1.8 has been divided into two policies now. One is to deal with those strategies and targeting grant programs to encourage the rehab of historic residential units. Again, we have a grant program that does that, so that would tie to that, and that would be for the Surfside neighborhood. And then policy, the new 5.19 is specific to what I was trying to capture from the E-zone, which is that bungalow area. And that policy just talks about the ability to do short-term rentals and what their concept is in the E-zone and putting that in its own specific policy. And then what is 5.19 in your document, the one that was presented to you is now 5.1.10. In terms of infrastructure objectives, we've added the stormwater master plan policy. This just is a concept that's been pulled out of the E-zone, and then added the streetscape on East ISB, a specific policy for that. That's a project that's ongoing in the redevelopment area.
We don't have 5.1.10.
Well, if you look at your document, you look at 5.1.9 and the one that was put in your packet.
The original.
The original document is now 5.1.10.
Okay. I get you. Very easy, Jason.
One just quick thing you might do in 1.8 and 1.9, Surfside is actually a capital. Okay.
In the handout?
Yeah, in the handout, just so you know, it should be a capital, just when it gets to the planning board.
Okay. Okay, let's see, where was that? So, infrastructure objectives, essentially those policies were added. Under transportation objectives, we added policies to construct the additional parking garages, add the policy to construct traffic improvements consistent with the master plan, and the development of a water taxi system. And again, let's see, there's some suggested language from some changes. If you look at policy 5.3.2, that one made a reference to downtown. Probably just just thinking that's where it would go, but we probably want to make it a little more flexible, so we kind of drop that specific reference to downtown. And then, and just so you know, there is a corresponding policy like this in the downtown plan. So I would say if this was ever to be implemented or as a taxi system between Main Street and downtown, it would not be just fall on one redevelopment area. It would probably be a shared expense because it is a eligible expense in both plans. Let's see. And then, and then on policy 5.3.2, there's suggested language if you want to strike just to do construct traffic improvements consistent with the E zone and not be specific to the roundabout at Main Street and A1A. Okay, under public amenity objectives, the proposed document adds policies that talk about constructing the beach town square that's in the E zone, expanding the pier with amusements and games. Again, a concept that came out of the E zone, developing the marina on the Halifax River, elevating the elevated pedestrian bridge, and supporting improvements to the Peabody Auditorium and the E-Zone Visitor Center. Those are all policies that have been placed. Those are new policies in the plan. Under design objectives, there's a new policy related to adopting the building form principles as they're laid out in the E-Zone. A policy that deals with the preservation of historically significant buildings. And then actually, just as when you look on page 9, those actually aren't new. The policy 5.4 through 6 in the design objectives, those aren't new policies. Those were moved from what was the land use. 5.5.4 through 6. Those three were in the plan before. They were just moved from another location to be with the design objectives. So they're not really new policies. They're just relocated.
So they were in the original?
Yes, they were in the original plan. Now, in the proposed amendments, there was a land use objective section in the that has all been moved into what's called Section 6, which is the land use and development controls. And the changes to that section essentially have been, well, I'm sorry, let me back up. I forgot one thing. In your suggested language, there was a few changes to policy 5.52, which is basically add in the language regarding compatibility buffers as you deal with those development code. That's something we're going to have to deal with, and then also ensuring this additional language about sense of place through the application of the design principles. And then a new policy 5.5.7, and this is to deal with something that was in another section, just make sure it carries through, which is maintaining the historic homes, the industrial row along the Halifax riverfront through preservation or mixed-use project, but and then as long as the historic property is integrated into the project, and this reflects what's in the comp plan. So again, just to make sure everything that's in the comp plan is making it into this plan. And the reason we have to deal with that is when you get to the land use section, what we essentially have done is under the land use plan section, I think I talked about this at the last meeting, we kind of threw out what was the old section, which really dealt with, was very specific and dealt with zoning codes that are not current, and you want the flexibility to change them. And what we've done is follow the pattern we do in our other redevelopment plans to make sure the plan is consistent with the comp plan. So basically the comp plan language has now been inserted into this plan, and all these different designated uses follow what's in the city's adopted land use, or in the redevelopment element of the comp plan of the city. And then in doing that, I shortened up some language, and there's a few instances where there's some policies that were in here, they seem to fit better in beginning sections, and, you know, if you have questions about that, I can get those details, but I won't at this time. But basically, any of those policies are in the land use they are somewhere in this plan.
And you've got amendments in both the comp plan, though, and in the redevelopment.
Well, but they're not amending, well, the only area where they're amending the land use section of the redevelopment element is to allow for the E-zone overlay.
Yeah.
Right. And so,
But when it comes to the historic homes and industrialist row, that's a major change.
right. Well, no, but that's in the comp plan now.
That's in the comp plan
That's there
now.
already, that's not a
That's
change.
already in the comp plan.
He's
Well,
just-
no, to protect it, but to allow for commercial uses that isn't in the comp plan. It's in the revision that we were given for tonight as well.
Actually, I don't think it is, but we'll get to that when we get to
Okay.
it. Because that
So I
only
thought-
deals
I
with
thought-
just the E-zone, and
That's
the
what I thought,
E-zone
this is just
stops
the E-zone,
just by Brooks Cleaners there.
right.
Yeah.
It doesn't come into the industrialist row.
Okay,
Right.
So the industrialist row is not what you're referencing in this handout on comp plan amendments.
They're not making any changes to that.
Okay.
The only changes they're making is as it relates to the E-zone, which is, as the chair mentioned, is the Brooks, is those
The
retail.
reference I thought was from Main Street to Oak Ridge Boulevard on the river,
But-
west of Halifax.
If there's a reference to it, that already exists in the comp plan.
We'll take a look at it.
Yeah.
So that's not in the E-zone, you're telling me?
Correct.
You're not in the E-zone?
I'm not in the E-zone.
Okay,
No, it stops at Brooks and,
okay.
And in terms of land use objectives, you'll see in the
Page-
on page 10, there's some specific objectives, and this was, again, was taken out of some of our other redevelopment plans. And we don't necessarily have to have these specific, you know, property values by 3% and new jobs by 10% as it relates to land use development. So in what was handed out to you, there's a revised land use objective, really just narrows that down and not so specific to those growth rates they're talking about. And then, let's see. So essentially, then what's section 6.2, starting on page 10, again, what I was saying, that's all the land use, designated land uses in the Main Street area as they are in the comp plan. And basically what was put in here is just narrowed it down to just dealing with what the uses generally are permitted in that area and what the FAR and the density to them. And then the only substantive change is on page 14, and this is to allow the E-zone overlay. Now, what was in the document that was handed to you previously was kind of a placeholder until we had the specific language developed by the planning staff, and then what was handed out in your addendum has that language. So what you have on the handout here is basically inserting different language into that section for the E-zone overlay. And then essentially the rest of it, this is some cleanup. The development controls, this is just language. It's more consistent and it was just taken from the downtown plan. It's just more up-to-date language. It's a more recent plan that's been updated. So kind of pull in that same language into this plan. And then when you go back to the appendix, like I said before, when you look at Appendix A will be the maps, and Appendix B, essentially the blight summary of this blight plan, that was just moved. That's not new language. And then the Appendix B also deals with, this is something else following the pattern that they did in the downtown plan. I just carried it into the Main Street plan, which is, it gives you a summary of the requirements and just gives you that summary of how we're meeting all the requirements of the state statute. So if there's any questions, I'll attempt to answer.
thank you, Jason. Reed, my understanding is that due to the timeline of this city commission and such, we really need to take action on this tonight, correct?
Yes, I think that would be the appropriate way to handle this right
Okay.
now. We'd like to move this forward on a time schedule, and I placed this proposed schedule in front of you of how this would all move forward.
Okay.
We'll certainly have opportunities to come back and amend this plan again in the future as we want to get into other changes. and we learn more through the process with the land development regulations.
Okay, thank you. 1 second, Dino. What I'd like to propose and how we go through this is, I'd first like to go through and make a few comments based upon some of my review and discussions with Reed and such. And then what I'd like to do is kind of take it on a page by page, okay? And then go around and get feedback with respect to each page, so we all kind of get a feel that way. I think that may be more efficient. Then we'll open it up for public comments, and then we'll come back and see, you know, how specifically we want to address any proposed revision or clarification. First, I have a general concern, and it ties into what we discussed last week, and that was the issue of attaching the whole E-zone plan to this as an exhibit. And you went through and you footnoted and gave us citations to the body of the E-zone master plan that was supposed to correlate to the proposed revision and therefore give us the basis for it. What I think still needs to be done, and I think with what revisions we request though, is I would like to see wherever you have the footnote referenced, I understand we're going to be deleting the footnotes, okay? When you delete the footnotes, you'll delete the reference from that portion of the master plan that we're supposed to be referring to, and so therefore it'll be up to somebody to try and look through the whole thing and figure out what you were thinking. What I'm going to be proposing is that everywhere you have a footnote and citing pages within the master plan, that you insert the footnote language up where you had the footnote, so we have a citation to the page and the section of the master plan to which you were referring.
Yeah.
Okay? Because I think that'll give us the historical value, and we won't be adopting the entire plan or approving the entire plan. And I even want to have language that limits it to where, in your amendments, where you're going to incorporate, it says, the concepts and strategies of the Daytona E-zone master plan. I'm going to want that to read certain concepts and strategies, so it doesn't appear that we're adopting the entire thing. But that's just a general statement as to how I'd like to see some of it restructured as we go on. And with that, what I'd like to do is start on, we're going to go page by page, and we're going to start around with Dino, and from my left to right, page by page, and if you could give us any specific feedback with respect to page 1. Dino, any comments?
Yeah, first, were we given a directive from the city to adopt the E-zone, to amend the redevelopment plan to include the E-zone, or is this something you're bringing to us for us to discuss?
There was a resolution passed by City Commission, Matt.
It's been approved by the City Commission, and it was clear that that was not the same thing as saying adopted. This action is because without the plan and being able to reference it and refer to it in the plan, we're not able to, make the connections here, the boundaries that we're talking about. It's very important to know the geography and everything else that's in there. So, we did this with the Riverfront Master Plan, and we need to recognize it and attach it. It doesn't mean that you're adopting the full plan. You have an approved plan that's attached for reference. And like was suggested here, it's certain policies that are being included in here. They're going to be in the redevelopment plan that will allow for us to implement parts of that plan.
Okay, so
not the whole plan.
basically, since we're dealing with existing, and the red part of here is what we're proposing, we're going to be going page by page, and we're going to be correcting what we want from the red to include or not include.
Actually, we can make comments with respect to the entirety of the document. The red is simply the original proposed revisions, and then we got this sheet that had revised proposed revisions.
Right.
So you can make a comment with respect to any of it because the whole thing is subject to revision. And it's really the policy document for implementing and operating the redevelopment agency.
Okay, well then, I'm going to make on page 1 to add the word certain, to adopt certain goals, policies, and strategies of the Daytona Beach E-zone master plan as you had
Which
mentioned
is what
earlier.
Dan said.
Which is
Okay,
within the
yeah.
2011's proposed amendment
Right.
section, yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay,
We're only doing
And-
page 1 right now.
yeah.
Okay, that's
Okay.
fine with me.
Gary, any further comments on page 1?
My only question, Reed, is a more general one. If you saw this issue of Florida Trend Magazine about the state's suggestion that redevelopment plans start echoing the word green and some of the efficiency standards. And I noticed reading through ours, we haven't yet. Is there an opportunity in the introduction to maybe add some sensitive language that will address that in the future so we're not back revising this thing within 6 months?
I'd encourage that we discuss green and some of these other things at a later time, but I agree. I think that those are some things we should be talking about, and I think we should feel free to go back and change this plan, within the year.
And in fact, I think there's been discussion about coming back. We have to do this now in order to keep things on track, so we want to try to limit it to what we need to do tonight. But we should feel free to come back 6 months, a year at the most, and address some bigger public policy issues.
And by the way, and as we're adding to each page, is the secretary going to?
Well, what we're just doing general discussion right now. We'll come back around after public discussion with our specific comments per page, because I want to get the feedback first before we go to that next level.
Okay.
Tim? Tracy?
I'm sorry, I'm sounding confused because I've just heard you say what
Okay.
I thought were two different things. Specifics, like Dino just
No,
said,
the specific, yeah.
we're not doing page by
well,
page
we're
now.
going page by page, but
Because actually, all of my comments are specific comments anyway. I don't have general
but
comments.
what I'm saying is,
So that would be mine. I'll wait until we actually get to
that's fine.
specifics.
Okay. I
Okay.
just, if you wanted
I do,
discussion
I
about
have,
things in such
I
a.
have one general question though about it. If we're doing this as an Appendix C, the E-zone master plan, how do we deal with the one inconsistency, since we have objectives about Surfside Village and the E-zone master plan has Surfside Village being actually where Mr. Webster lives? And Seabreeze being someplace else that's not even in, how do we deal with what we mean?
Real simple. Go ahead, Jason.
Okay, that's what I need to know.
Well, one is we're going to put a map in Appendix A clarifying what the Surfside
Thank
neighborhood
you.
is.
Okay.
All right,
And I forgot
thank
to
you,
mention
thank you very much. That's all I needed to know generally.
Okay, well, Tracy, I really wasn't looking for just general comments now, but what I was looking for is.
Page one, I
You
ditto.
may change your mind with respect to a specific revision after we all go through, so I'm
Right.
not asking for everything you want. I'm asking for you to just.
Page
discuss-
one, ditto,
Okay.
certain.
I'm fine on page 1, but I
Okay.
do have something to come back.
I'm okay.
Okay, page 2.
All right.
Any specific comments with respect to page 2,
Well,
Dino?
first of all, now we're getting into blight conditions, which is something I hate, okay? I understand when we're doing this, we're changing, we're going to be changing the red portion. We can't change anything that's already been adopted from the, because obviously,
We can't
you
go
know,
back and reinvent the wheel.
I know you can't reinvent the wheel, but there's going to be something coming up later on which talks about eminent domain, and in the state of Florida removed eminent domain in the community redevelopment area. So are we going to allow that word to continue on in this when it's not even allowed, even if you wanted to?
Well, it is allowable in certain instances.
Yeah, but that not as a condition of blight. Not when you're not, like right now on page 19, and I'm jumping because I want to know, are we supposed to correct flaws within here right now? Like on page 19, it talks about condemnation, and it starts talking about the elements of blight, like diversity of ownership and what have you. Well, the state of Florida does not allow for the use of eminent domain for to get rid of blight anymore, so why would we allow,
When we get to that, let's get to that page, and you may suggest that it be revised as allowed in accordance with Florida law,
okay,
okay?
all right.
That's a great idea.
General, that-
And that's,
'Cause
very
that-
open to
Very
that.
But to see that, based on that, then I could deal with having conditions of blight, because then I'm not causing
Right.
an eminent domain action, okay?
Understood.
All right, okay.
Very good.
Then I'm okay with page 2.
Gary?
No, I think Dino has a very good point here. Reed, have you gone through the plan to make sure that it does comport with changes in case law on the state level? Like this, like the eminent domain and the blight condition?
No, I have not gone through to look at case law, number one. And I don't know if legal
As
has.
legal?
I mean, I'm assuming that as case law developed through the years, we were changing our plan as we went.
Well, you
correct?
haven't.
I wouldn't, no,
Well, that's something I suggest we seriously look at in the next round, and
I'll touch upon it when we get
That's
to
fine.
19, okay.
that's fine.
yeah,
And that's very fair.
yeah.
Tim?
The only thing I had was the program objectives and turning to goals, and I like that wording better.
Okay, very good.
Nope.
Hey.
Yep.
I'm
Page two.
okay with it, but I was under the impression that any red changes were imports from the E-zone. And I gather that it's from various other documents.
It's from various, and that's why we had the footnote as to their source or why they were putting it in.
Okay.
And because they're trying to not only be consistent with the E-zone plan, but the comp plan and some other general
Redevelopment
language that
plan.
they put into the downtown plan that's more contemporary than what was there 20
Okay, and
plus
one,
years ago.
real quick, keep it simple if you can. The basic structure of how these various documents interface and interact. What is the foundation? What comes next? What comes next?
Of the the redevelopment plan and the comp plan and such, is that what you're
And the
asking?
land development code and,
Okay,
yes.
Essentially, well, this is where it gets a little tricky, but comp plan drives everything. That's your adopted policy. You have you have a vision plan that lays out a broad vision, but it's not specific. As a legal document, you have the comprehensive plan, and then what you do in terms of a redevelopment plan or land development code has to conform to the land development code.
So
Or,
do
I'm sorry, to the city comprehensive
comp
So
plan.
are the redevelopment plan and the land development code, are they like equal? And they both, the parent is the comp plan?
It gets a little tricky that, and this is kind of debate we had, what comes first, because as you develop a redevelopment plan, the redevelopment plan may suggest changes to the comp plan. But
It's
for
just
the
that
most part, eventually you
I have to be
adopt.
honest, I've spent my time trying to focus on the E-zone, and now I realize, no, I've got all these other documents that they're importing. so
Well,
I apologize.
You're
I
gonna
just
be
wanted to
quizzed,
clarify that. It's more complicated than I ever dreamed.
and this is maybe, if I,
If I may, Jay, the redevelopment plan is really the plan under which this board is enabled and authorized that allows things to happen on this portion of the beach side, to use the tax increment financing and do some focus out there. And then the development is citywide, development code, and the comp plan is citywide. And so they all have to integrate and be consistent, and this is one step in the process of trying to get consistency to allow the E-zone.
And they're governed by separate statutes of state law.
They-
They're
they-
governed by state law. They're required,
All
the
of them.
three documents,
All
they
of them.
have specific requirements by state law
Okay.
as to what they
Thank you.
do.
Page 3, we're going to change it up a little bit. We're just going to say, does anybody have any comments on page 3? And we'll start with Dino, who's raised his hand.
Okay, on the part that says remove or rehabilitate structures, I would say.
Can you say where you
Yeah,
are
where
on
you're at.
page 3?
On paragraph 3, it says remove or rehabilitate structures. It might as well say remove or rehabilitate and provide incentives. Remove or provide incentives to rehabilitate structures. Like in the E-zone, they talk about providing some kind of incentives in order for somebody to rehabilitate. So should we stress that within the rehabilitation process?
Not here.
It's just a general comment of basic goal of
Okay.
what we're trying to do.
All right, then that's fine.
Any other comments? Moving on to page 4, any comments?
Yes.
Tracy?
Were we starting with Dino still?
No, we're just starting
Okay,
generally,
okay,
anybody
page-
who speaks up.
Page 4, one of the things that was noted in the E-zone that I actually going back and reading through this as an economic development objective, actually providing insurance of operational standards, was addressing and managing itinerant vendor issue to ensure benefit to the entire Daytona Beach economy. I think somehow that language is key to an economic development objective. It was noted and talked about extensively. And the other thing down on policy 5.1.3, developing the strategies to assist with the development of the 1,500, that's a whole other city, hotel rooms. I did appreciate in Commissioner White's comments about also a practical approach to doing something to help upgrade existing hotel stock. I know that's not in the E-zone, but I just think in terms of, and maybe that's something that really shouldn't be incorporated at this point, but I think that that's something that we should be looking to do. Not just new. If you're not upgrading what you have existing, I think it needs to work together. So.
Page 4, any other comments?
I didn't quite catch Ms. Remark's first.
The E-zone, the master plan that we're looking at,
Right.
one of the economic objectives that they were looking at, and it was also providing assurance of operational standards. I'm on page 17 in the E-zone, addressing and managing itinerant vendor issue to ensure benefit to the entire Daytona Beach economy. I just know this board has had a lot of discussion. I know the commission has had a lot of discussion. It's come up in the E-zone, and I think to ignore that as how it deals with an economic objective, that we need to look at it as an economic objective, dealing with itinerant vendor issues.
So
So
where would you
I-
specifically place the language?
Under an economic development objective.
And what would you like to add?
Well, I'm not sure. Maybe it's taking it right from this, providing an assurance of operation. I don't know what that actually means, provide assurance of operational standards, but address and manage, just what the language says, the itinerant vendor issue to ensure benefit for the entire Daytona Beach economy. Obviously, when you start looking through here, there's some more, information. If they're suggesting managing the itinerant vendor issue, I think that's a key. I mean, Ms. Stone knows how key it is to economics. And I think with this being in the heart of the E-zone, that we need to have that.
Stated rather than implied.
Right.
So is your point that itinerant vending should be increased and enhanced because it's
Well,
helpful to an
the
economic
E-zone,
objective?
I'm not sure the E-zone itself was, the master plan was a little vague on it as well, but it does say that it needs to be managed better. I don't know what that means, but I know that it's a key component of both the Main Street redevelopment area, and it's going to be in the heart of the E-zone. And I think unless we are dealing with whatever is meant by managing that or addressing that.
May I?
Yeah.
We really tried to leave out those things that were operational management issues.
Okay, so you're going to call, that's operational.
That was more in that category that we decided to leave that out, and
Okay.
because quite frankly, it carries more controversy, and more a policy issue that I think needs more vetting, and
Okay,
I would say this is not the time to probably tackle that one.
okay. And I wasn't saying grow it or get rid of it.
Well,
I
I
was
thought you
just
might
saying, I was
want
using
more of it.
manage it, whatever that means.
Page 4, any further comments? Page 5, any comments?
Wait, one second. Yeah, page, no, page 6, I could go on.
No comments? Moving on to page 6.
Okay.
Dino?
I would like to strike out the policy 5.3.2, construct traffic improvements such as a traffic calming roundabout.
They did.
It's out, it's,
Okay.
Well,
it's
yes,
amended
but no, it
to,
hasn't. It's been proposed as an amended, simply deleting the language such as a traffic calming device, which is already referenced in the plan, so it would be incorporated by reference.
right.
You may want, because I was going to actually suggest that we have language suggesting that they not build such a traffic calming device.
I know. We
because
don't
I
want
think
another
that's-
Seabury Circle.
Yeah, it's going to be 10 times worse than the Seabury Circle.
Yeah.
And so that was going to be one comment I had.
That, well, I was going to suggest the language we keep it, so maybe the fact that what's even struck.
Let's leave traffic improvements.
'Cause I do know-
Consistent with the master
I mean, I
plan
know
and
four,
not
five
reference
commissioners that
specifically
want
the
it.
circle. That's a debatable issue.
Yeah.
It's really beyond us.
Well, but if we
Recommend.
put in there, construct traffic improvements consistent with the E-zone plan, it specifically references that circle.
It
And
doesn't say all.
No, but no,
It doesn't
but
say
it's-
construct all traffic improvements. It says construct, you want to insert some, or selected, or something.
I would change the language to construct traffic enhancements, like, like some of the signages and what have you, and leave out the obstacles that they propose in the middle of A1A.
Well,
Yeah.
improvements
some-
is the
some-
operative word.
Yeah, I
That's
think,
the
yeah,
operative
that's what I agree.
Yeah, but-
So perhaps we can just have construct traffic improvements and leave it at that with no reference to the plan. Because I think it's the plan that causes the problem with respect to the circle and the hardship. So construct traffic
But,
improvements.
well, no, because part of the plan is the closing to Noble. You cannot leave out the reference to the plan. There's a lot of traffic information in here that's not just the circle. So I don't think you can
Can we-
leave that out, but I agree with also the constructing traffic improvements and enhancing through wayfinding signage consistent with the E-zone, but you have a lot of traffic information in there. So if
Well,
you,
and that's part of why we wanted to make sure we had the citations to the specific section and page numbers within the plan, so we knew what we were saying we wanted it to be consistent with.
Could we,
Gary?
I think we know that the commission is not finished with the E-zone plan, and I think the traffic circle is going to be debated.
yeah.
But I think it's up to us to make this consistent with the E-zone master plan, whatever it turns out
To be.
So I think maybe we need to start keeping a list of specific things that we would like to give advice to the commission on, acting as the CRA, like no circle, or yes, a circle, things like that. But I think we have to keep the language consistent with the E-zone master plan roadmap.
Well,
we really
We don't
don't,
have
but-
to adopt everything from the
Yeah,
E-zone.
we really don't.
You're not
and-
adopting anything from the E-zone.
may I
You're
offer
putting the
you,
E-zone in as an appendix.
Right,
We're not adopting anything from the E-zone.
correct.
Ray,
may I offer a maybe different language here that would help you in the case of a roundabout or something? That construct traffic improvements to the extent practical, consistent with the E-zone master plan. So that way, if there's something that's not practical about a roundabout or anything else, you've solved that.
Well, can you repeat that? Construct traffic.
Construct traffic improvements to the extent practical, consistent with the E-zone master plan.
and that might work.
And then, would that be,
You really want to raise the practical question on this entire plan?
no, but,
Are we going to start inserting practical throughout the whole draft?
Yeah, but I'd
I
rather
mean,
have
for
that.
instance, support the development of a water taxi system where
Right.
practical. I mean,
Right.
I would, that's more impractical to
Yeah.
me than,
Well, we have a few comments there. Any
Yeah.
other comments on page 6?
I've always wondered if one of the premises of this plan is to promote the walkability and to draw the people down Main Street. The other thing I know is the beauty of a roundabout, it's continuous flow of vehicles around the circle. So how are pedestrians to cross the roundabout, which what I think would be a significant intersection?
Yeah, in other words, the pedestrians have difficulty because of the lack of, then you have to put lights at a roundabout,
So there goes the roundabout.
and there goes the roundabout and its continual flow, and that's why I had the privilege of going to France this summer, and they have roundabouts every 10 feet.
Yep.
Including, I mean, in Paris, it's just amazing, and multiple lanes, and this is gonna be a 2-lane,
With the
north and south, into Main Street, and the single, and it's just gonna be a nightmare, but that's.
Right, right. And in London and in Greece, I was there driving through roundabouts and what have you. The people there are used to driving through roundabouts. Here they're not. I mean, I remember the Seabury Circle.
Well, we understand it's a significant issue.
Okay, well, and I'm going to add to 5.3.3 and change the language to look into the feasibility of a water taxi system instead of support the development of a water taxi system. That way, if we choose to have it in the future, we could, but I don't want to say that we're endorsing having it until we know whether it's feasible to have it or not.
This mirrors the downtown plan language, doesn't it? This, and that's, some of the things we're looking at are for consistency with downtown, because the taxi would be shared.
Right.
And so
But it also
that's
came
why-
out of the E-zone too.
Yeah.
I think the E-zone master plan talks about it, but then it has been a concept in the downtown.
And, you know, everything on here is subject to feasibility. It's
Yeah.
just, you know, if we try to put caveats on everything that way, we'll just drive ourselves a little crazy.
What about, Dan, you're an attorney, what about on 5.3.2, inserting in front of the word E-zone, the word final, the final E-zone master plan? Because we've been told by the commission, we've been told by city management, that the E-zone plan is still a work in progress, and that what we currently have now might not be the final.
If you want to do that, the appropriate language would be as amended from time to time.
Yeah.
So, you know, and the idea is that just to make this consistent with that, and that's not unreasonable to have this consistent with the E-zone plan as it may be amended from time to time for that purpose. You know, but then you could put that everywhere.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah. So,
But then we leave it the way it is,
okay.
with consistent with the E-zone master plan.
We'll see. Any other comments on page 6? Page 7, any comments?
Yeah,
Dino?
well, I'm sorry. On the 5.4.4, when it talks about constructing an elevated pedestrian bridge to connect the Ocean Center to convention hotels across A1A, one flaw in the other bridge, that if you compare other cities, neighboring cities, is that they have more of a traffic moving device, like for instance, like not an escalator, but a moving sidewalk. If you go to the Orange County Convention Center, or if you go to the airports or wherever you go, even Universal, people are lazy. If you want people to move, you have to put in these moving sidewalks in order to facilitate the move and to encourage parking into the structure. So obviously I would like to see pedestrian bridges, but I would like to also encourage moving sidewalk within them, or the feasibility of that. Do we add the language now?
I don't think we need that now.
Okay.
Dave?
Yeah, can I just make a suggestion, and nothing against you, Dino, but if we try to change or improve everything that's in this plan, like putting a walking sidewalk and a pedestrian bridge, we all like the pedestrian bridge, we all know that. Those changes can be made down the road. If we try to do that tonight, we will be here till 8 a.m. I mean, that's just a suggestion. I mean, we're getting really, really picky on everything here.
Any other comments, page 7? Page 8? No comments, page 9? No comments, page 10? Teresa?
Okay, so I just wanted to check. That was, 6.1 was
It's been replaced with the new handout, proposed 6.1, much shorter.
slimmed down, yeah. I like it better.
Slim down.
The diet
Yes.
version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other comment on that? Okay. page 11, and I have a comment with respect to these pages. And Reed, we discussed the issue where you talk about this area ratio of 10, but it doesn't have to what? And have we done anything to clarify that language? Because I think it's from some other code that seems to be missing the description as to.
Actually, a FAR, it's in the comp plan, and a FAR is a formula that doesn't need to be in here, but that everyone that deals with code knows what that means. So it's, this language is right out of the comp plan.
But does it
And the
define
redevelopment
within
plan.
the comp plan what the ratio is applied to?
FAR is just a general formula used in development. It's not a floor area ratio, it's just a,
He's saying of 10, Dan's point is that it mentions 10.
right, which is out of the comp plan for high-intensity mixed use. Other areas have a FAR of 3, other areas have a FAR of 0.5, or,
And which is the floor area ratio to the land area, to the square footage of the land, correct, Reed?
It's,
Yes,
you
and
take the
there's.
square footage, you
Yeah.
take the square footage of the building, proposed building, and divide it by the land, and that's what you get as the
That's
FAR. And it's basically a known principle of planning that's just known by planners and developers. It's, you know,
Judges.
a known term.
yeah. Land use attorneys, they all know it.
Okay, I still think it should be clarified as to what it's a ratio to.
I also, I think it strikes me it's way too specific to be in the redevelopment plan. And I'm not sure when I read these if I know where they plug into. And so I don't know if that's another map if it's in there, I guess I
In
didn't.
Appendix A,
Okay.
there, these are existing designated land use. Nothing is new. It's just, again, it's just cleaning up the plan. This should have been in the plan all along.
Okay. But the-
Complementing or being consistent with the comp plan.
Okay.
And in Appendix A will be a map that shows all the land uses.
And 10 is the magic number.
If I could just go back really, the comp plan, that by state law, this is what decides everything, how we do it in the city. This language, the comp plan has elements in it, infrastructure, economic development, redevelopment. This is the exact language. If you took the city's comp plan and read it, the redevelopment element, this is the exact language of our comp plan. And that's how you write that kind of language. That's how you write that.
And if we wanted to see where it
You'd have
applies
to
to, we'd go
change-
to the comp plan?
Yeah.
Okay,
And you'd
because
have to
comp plan-
change the comp plan, which
Yeah.
you do under 2 cycles in the,
But the comp plan tells you where it is, where it applies to?
yes, yes, the comp plan tells you what it applies to.
Okay, so this
And
is
how-
no change of, okay.
This is, yeah, it's just, as he said, moving it, but it's a mirror image of what's approved in the comp plan.
Jason, if this is referring to a plan in Exhibit A, shouldn't this say the land described in Exhibit A, following land use designations are hereby established, or something to that effect?
Have a paragraph, yeah, I know what you're saying.
Something tying this
Yeah.
into that?
Yes.
Well,
That's part of where I was confused.
Me too, because
Well,
I
the
went to
front
page
of it-
39 and,
Okay, if you look at page 10, it says policies and land use designations of the land use element of the city's comprehensive plan as it exists now or may be amended from time to time. So that's the language that goes into all of this land use designation on page 10. That's your introduction.
But I think
on
I would
page 10.
concur that maybe for easier reading on this, that there should be maybe just a sentence that also, because the land use map for the Main Street area will be attached in Appendix A,
Okay.
and this should refer to
We
it.
should put that intro language into
Right.
this about the plan.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're gonna, unless anybody has anything specific up through page, any further comments at all? Since a lot of it
Yes.
is generic, but go ahead then, Tracy.
Page 15, under the comp plan language in the sort of middle of the page, by adoption of this redevelopment plan, the city will proceed to consider amendments to its comprehensive plan as recommended in Exhibit 1. What is Exhibit 1? We have Appendix A, B, C. I couldn't find Exhibit 1.
You know, that should be deleted.
Okay,
That
thank you.
shouldn't be
The whole
there.
sentence?
Yes.
Okay.
Or-
By adoption, starting at that. That's
Well,
actually
I mean,
the language. I just need to
all
know what,
development.
that's our current
The
redevelopment
last two
language.
sentences of the last sentence.
Yeah, there's, the exhibit ones are in
I
the,
think the second sentence can be deleted, and again, this is where my copying from another plan. That's
Uh-huh.
just a error. Because what happened was, beginning to say before, is that when they adopted the downtown plan, they actually recommended some changes. And so
Okay.
they had an attached map that had the recommended changes, but you're not doing that.
Okay, and then the sentence right before it that ends with Exhibit 1, that would actually say presented in Appendix A, since you just said you're putting a future land use.
Yeah, we could do that, Appendix A.
Okay,
So then exhibit 1 becomes a.
Appendix A.
So, yeah, so we'll correct that section.
Okay.
So clean it up a little bit.
They're more like this.
any other comments?
Yeah, page 32.
Page what?
32.
Oh, I got something before that.
Under 2A, show by diagram in general terms, I think the refer to Appendix C zone map for diagrams of the parks and recreation areas. That parks and recreation for the, if we're referring to the E zone, is the public realm areas. So that should be,
Yeah, that's a change.
okay.
Wait, do what with the?
What was that, Jason?
Parks and recreation and.
It mentions parks and recreation, but the E-zone actually mentions public realm, not
that
parks
doesn't
and
call it
recreation.
Parks and recreation, so
It's
you'll be
just a-
looking forever. 2A becomes, parks and recreation becomes public realm. Yeah. Okay. That was it.
That's it?
Mhm.
Any other
Well-
comments?
Well, yeah, I definitely,
Okay.
I want to be.
Okay, Dino had a comment about the,
Yeah, on
Yep.
page 19, I'd like to take out condemnation.
all right, hang on, Dino, let us get there.
Jason,
Where-
how should that read?
Where is
Hold on,
that
let
on
me-
page 19?
Where are we at on there? on-
Under under
Oh, here we
property
are.
acquisition.
Third, okay, got it. Okay. Under property
the first-
acquisition, the last,
First paragraph, under property acquisition, take out condemnation, and then on the last paragraph, under that same section, remove eminent domain.
well,
Well-
now, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
We could still,
You can still use eminent domain if
For
it's for a
public
public
purposes.
purpose.
right.
So if you take it
This-
out
this is
totally, you're
not-
saying you can't use it.
So yeah, so this is not,
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll take out,
it's not, we would still do it consistent with current state law, which we
Right.
can't do it for economic development purposes. And that was the change in, I believe, '06. But you could still do eminent domain for transportation purposes.
yes,
Right.
yes, yes.
So, and this is not
it has to
specific.
stay in there.
Yeah, this is not specific.
Also, condemnation is about condemnation of the home.
Yeah, you have to
That-
keep that, 'cause
Right.
they're not talking about the town.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think they're talking about private property for private purposes anymore.
Well, they were at one time.
Yes, they
Right.
said anymore.
Okay, but yeah, I don't see anything in there that would say it's gonna be done in conflict with the applicable law. and
Yeah.
It should stay in.
Say a
Yeah.
lot, say a lot, takes forever.
Yep.
Dino, anything else?
Go on.
Let me try again.
I have a question, Dan.
Yeah, Dave.
On the E-zone overlay or in something else down the road on the grant program.
Page, where are you?
Well, I'm on the grant program, Gary. I hate to do this, but we can go to this later on, but how, Dino kind of brought it up earlier, is on the business facade grant and leasehold improvement grants, they want to change the target area to the E-zone.
Yeah.
So what does that do to the current facade grant programs, like we are in the our stores in the Main Street redevelopment area, but we are not in the E-zone plan. So how would these two things gonna interconnect? How can somebody like Salty Dog Surf Shop use the facade grant if you're targeted only the E-zone?
That's let's discuss that when we get up to
Okay,
the
that
grant program.
where we wanna get.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I have a suggestion on page 12. Riverfront mixed uses, restaurants with outdoor terraces overlooking the river. And I'd like to add it with dockage available, if possible.
It does have it, public and private docks.
Yeah.
Short-term and marina slips and tie-ups, that's in there.
Right in the, where it says riverfront mixed uses, provide for thematic uses of waterfront sites
Yeah.
connected by docks
Okay.
or wharves.
All right.
Yep, that's there.
Dino, did you find anything?
I'm still looking.
Okay. Dino, I tell you what, while you're looking, why don't we call up for public comments, and then we'll have a chance to come back.
Can I ask one more thing?
Sure thing.
Okay. On pages 11, 12, and 13, are all of the bulleted items lifted from the comp plan?
Yes. That was an exact
Okay.
cut and paste.
I didn't know if it was
from,
just the FARs or...
Yep, everything.
All right, do we have any public comments with respect to the Main Street redevelopment plan amendment dealing with E-zone? And you will be limited to 3 minutes. We have the 3-minute buzzer ready.
Right here, I think.
Well,
Is that it?
I'll be the buzzer now.
Just push 3.
Yes, let Mr. Libby be the,
Here's 3.
I'll be the buzzer.
Start.
Someone have a second hand on their watch?
I do.
Okay.
Total time.
Carry
right
a
here.
buzzer.
Not gonna let him get by with 1 second more.
I hope not. Is staff ready?
All right.
Okay.
Carrie will operate as the official timer. All right, name and address, and if you're referring to any specific section, if you could try and give us a page number if possible.
Okay. Neil Harrington, 101 Grand Oak Circle. I'm not here to talk about any specific pages. It's sort of like Old Home Week. I feel like Rip Van Winkle, because 10 years ago, the new members of this board were Teresa Doan and Gary Libby, and Jerry Fink was running around in the audience back there, so it's kind of deja vu. Anyway, I would like to represent the visioning committee. I haven't heard one word about it. Maybe it's not appropriate, I don't know. But I would think somewhere in your documentation that all of these things you are discussing should meet at least the criteria of what we discussed in the visioning. We have a visioning foundation, which the first funding came from the city commission in order to implement the visioning. And I think that it's important at least to be referenced. I don't know whether it's in your documentation or not. I don't have that. But at least it should refer. You have a whole series of numbers and points. You can add a couple of more with the visioning. Now, some people don't think the visioning committee amounts to a hill of beans, but we're trying. And there are several of us here that are on that committee, including your chairman. So I would just like you to remind staff that anything you're talking about needs to refer to that document, and I'm sure that the commission wants that information. I know several of the commissioners refer to that when they talk about their votes. So just a reminder, and it's going to be our obligation as a visioning committee to see that these things are in compliance, even though we don't have a hammer to implement it.
And Neil, I'd like to take a look at that. We're going to really try and look at some more of these policy and integration in the next several months and such. And if you could just kind of make sure we get reminded of that and try and get it in the loop.
I will.
We'd like to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think several of us were going to recommend that the vision be noted in the introduction. along perhaps with some of these other considerations that I think it would be impossible, Neil, to measure everything in this redevelopment
Yes,
plan
it's
against
very
the
broad.
vision. However, I think you're right, we should be noted. I think.
As a conceptual consideration and such for things,
As
absolutely.
context.
Yes.
As context.
I agree, but I just don't think we have the language tonight, but I would
Right.
really like to take a look at that.
Yeah,
Neil, in the introduction would be satisfactory?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
If I could, too, Neil, we are required to point out those items in the vision to make sure that we're consistent in promoting
I
that
thought you
vision.
were, but I
When we get to
just
the
hadn't put it-
commission level, we definitely have to point those things out, but we have looked at the vision and trying to incorporate, we just simply haven't noted all of that there, but you're exactly right,
Yeah,
that it needs to be addressed.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. My name is Don Kane, 101 University Boulevard, Daytona Beach. I, too, was a member of the Vision Committee, and I have some general concerns about the E-Plan in general and questions. I hope I can get them all in. But I've been around business, either owning businesses or managing business for over 50 years. And the one guideline that we always use in business is supply and demand. And I find it very incredible that the E-Plan is creating so much supply with no demand. A couple of years ago, I did a study on motel rooms in Daytona Beach area. We have 13,000 rooms. We brought in 8 million people a year in tourism for about $4 billion in income, which is pretty good. Now, that's dwindled down to 6.75 million people a year, and we make a little bit less than $4 billion a year. So that's a trend. That's a negative trend. And I'm just curious as to how the city of Daytona Beach, through the E-Zone, can build building 5 new hotels at $150 million a pop, 750 rooms, to justify filling them up. I just don't know how that's going to happen. If you look at our present situation, we have on Seabreeze Boulevard, for example, it's about 70%, almost 70% vacant. It's becoming a boarded up boulevard. And Main Street, as you know, is over 50%. So I find it incredible that the city doesn't formulate a plan to try to develop what's already here. There's an old business term called SWOT, sell what's available today. Well, we have 13,000 rooms, and they're less than 50% occupied. In December of last year, the Hilton only occupied 15% of the rooms. This is very alarming. And so I think for that reason, I think that the city, and
3 minutes.
Reed, I think you have to use the analytical ability of your huge 31 staff people that make over $100,000 to do your own analysis. Don't depend on an outside analysis. Do your own analysis as to the demand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your time's up. Any other public comments?
John Nicholson, notwithstanding the discrepancy on Surfside where it's located.
Name?
Name and
Oh,
address.
John Nicholson, 413 North Granbury Avenue. On page 13, it mentions 20 units. Now,
Page
they,
13 of what?
what you were going through,
The E-Zone or?
the
oh,
E-zone,
this.
okay? It mentions that Surfside Village is to allow 20 units per acre plus business. Now, Surfside had fought for years to be a single-family development. I'm presuming and I'm hoping you're referring this only to that area that is in the E-zone, correct? And it's not going to bleed into the neighborhood? Maybe, perhaps, hopefully? All right? Because they fought for it and they, would not like to have it come in the back door and say, oh, well, Main Street redevelopment okayed it already. Secondly, I see nothing about the authority. One of the big things was there would be an authority over the E-zone. I don't see it in this anywhere. Are we disregarding the authority that would be in charge of all the building and all the whatnot? So if that's taken out, it would be kind of nice, but I would like, clarification. Third, I would ask you to vote to literally, if there's something that you don't like, knowing staff, and as they've gone in the past, remember Manny Bornia, how this board backed Manny Bornia to the T, and that's not exactly what you all did, but it went to the commission that you had backed them. So if there's something that you don't like the roundabout, I ask you to suggest it and say, no, we don't want the roundabout because of the confusion. The water taxi doesn't seem feasible, blah, blah, blah. That if there's something there that is definitely not worth pursuing, why go 2 years pursuing something that you don't even really want? All right? Bars, are we then, because it's mentioned on page 11, 12, and 13, bars, 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 and bars where applicable. Are we going for a Duval Street or Bourbon Street? Is that what we're doing by recommending this? Because we thought that, and we've loosened it, what constitutes a restaurant, et cetera. So those 11, 12, and 13, there are a lot of things in there that they're pushing. Do we necessarily want to push those? And if we know down the line what we want, if we want a Bourbon Street, if we want a Duval Street, fine, let's know that up front. And I have some questions about some other stuff, but this is the parking is a big thing. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Very good. We'll close the public comments. I think I tried to take some notes as we went through, and I think rather than initially go back to everybody for comments per page, I think I'll try and summarize, and if I miss something, someone speak up. How's that? First thing, what I think we need to do is consider this proposed plan as revised by the second handout of 2 pages here, with certain modifications on that. And the first modification would be under the 2011 amendments paragraph in the first line where it says, the purpose of the 2011 amendments to this plan is to incorporate the concepts and strategies, striking the word the, or leaving the word the, or
Certain,
striking the and include certain. Okay?
You want a motion to the effect?
No, we're waiting until
No, we're just,
he's just putting this together right now.
let's talk about the roundabout for a second. Because I agree with John that if we don't like the roundabout as a group here, then we should say so and say, let's not do the roundabout in our proposed. And I don't like the roundabout. I think it's a mistake. Is there anybody that thinks the roundabout's a good idea, or we should just leave it generic? Because I think if we leave it generic, we're implicitly approving the roundabout. And I think that's a mistake.
I like it.
Yeah.
Tracy likes it.
Yeah, and I don't know enough I haven't seen the traffic studies. I don't know enough about it to kill it, to suggest that it's inappropriate right now.
Well, I don't. Okay. Dave?
I agree with Dan. I mean, I've been through many roundabouts at Fernandina Beach. They have roundabouts one after the other there, and you're going 4-lane into a 2-lane. I don't see any way of 4-lane in Main Street at this time. I just think you're looking at a nightmare. I don't like it.
Okay. Well, maybe we go with the generic language that says construct traffic improvements. I guess consistent, but in our minutes, as part of the motion, we have some language that there's substantial concern relative to the roundabout.
Well, there are going to be other things we have concern about other than the, and I think we should batch those.
Okay. We had a comment about the water taxi and getting into feasibility. I think that's just getting too much wordsmithing. Then page 3, maybe this was part of it, but it wasn't specific. The second paragraph was proposed to be stricken.
Right.
Okay. The general concept that wherever we have references to the E-zone master plan, Appendix C, with a footnote, that the footnote language identifying the page and portion of the E-zone plan be incorporated into the body of the paragraph at that location.
Be textualized.
Yes.
Tell me when you're in design.
On page 10, under the future land use designations, the paragraph, the following future land use categories are hereby established, will be preceded by some introductory language referencing the plans in Appendix A.
Maps, the maps and Appendix A.
The maps
Yeah,
Maps.
maps and Appendix A.
in Appendix A. On page 15, under the comprehensive plan paragraph, the second sentence commencing with "this redevelopment plan recommends" will be stricken, and the last sentence will remove the reference to Exhibit 1 and replace it with Appendix A.
Correct.
Page 32.
Page 32, under the required contents of community redevelopment plan, paragraph 2A, the reference to parks and recreation shall be public realm. And I think that is all I made note of. Did I miss any of the suggested revisions?
I'd like to move
Wait,
adoption.
wait. I think we do need to go back to one thing that Gary was talking about in reading this too. On our revised language, okay, the second page, policy 5.57. I think this is confusing. Maintain the historic homes industrialist row. Industrialist row will not have mixed-use project. Industrialist row is a different zoning. I think that does confuse the E-zone with beyond Brooks.
And this might be something we need to clean up. Maybe we need to come back and look at. I would just look at the comp plan itself is a little confusing on it.
Yeah, it is.
Very confusing.
And because the way the riverfront mix, that particular land use designation, I think, extends further, and it talks about that. But in reality, I don't think we're ever going to see those homes, be used other than for the being protected. I don't see practically how this can happen.
Yeah, and also the integration of the historic homes, that's talked about specifically in the E-zone. That's not talked about here. So yeah, I do think there's some problem with that language. So I don't know if it should just be stricken tonight.
We could strike it and we could bring it back, and maybe we need
Let's do that.
I think we need to deal with some.
Well,
It might be a future comp plan change.
First off, this is existing language, correct?
No, this is new. This is new language.
It is related to what's existing in the comp plan under the riverfront mixed use, and that's where I would agree, there is some, as I looked at it as I was developing, that it conflicts what's in the comp plan.
Yeah.
Then I
conflict.
suggest we just go ahead and strike it for this.
Yeah,
And you can
tonight.
come
I would
back and deal with that
I would
issue.
work on that. I think that would be my only other thing.
I agree.
Okay.
So you want a motion now to accept
So
those
moved. What?
changes as suggested by the chairman?
Yeah.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just on the roundabouts,
We're gonna address that later.
I would rather go ahead and address it now, or take a vote of the board.
There are other things that,
Actually, you could do that as a separate item after this, a separate recommendation.
All right.
Reed, when are we gonna get another chance to take another bite of the apple for this? Just come back and list our concerns and problems and things that we want to pull out. Is this the appropriate time, or is it we're gonna get another opportunity at this?
Let's go into the planning board next week.
this is it.
This is your opportunity to get comments out the first time around, but, there'll be chances to change the plan later. But if it's specific to the E-zone, right now to make those comments
Okay.
right
so-
now.
okay.
All right, any comments or discussions with respect to the motion? Dino?
Well, do you want us to come back right after this motion? I would rather amend, it. I'd like to amend the motion to strike out the roundabout.
Do we have a second? Second. Do we have any discussion on the motion to amend?
I think, Mr. Chairman, if, I would feel better if we moved on to the planning board and to the commission as a separate recommendation, some misgivings we have about certain parts of the plan, rather than try and go into the language as recommended to us now and alter it.
But I believe that this is we're making a recommendation to adopt this, so right now would be the time for us to make any changes like we
Roundabout
have.
isn't mentioned.
Yes, it is, specifically right here.
No, it's stricken, it just says as recommended in the E-zone plan.
And in the
But the
E-zone,
E-zone
you'll
plan
see an
specifically
obstacle
mentions
in
the
middle of
roundabout.
Right now it does.
Yeah, so, well, we
Well-
have a motion and a second, and discussion on this motion. Any other comments? Tracy?
Well, I was just going to say that the other thing, I mean, you could take that line of thinking that it's saying consistent with the E-zone. I mean, we also have language in here that talks about public incentives, tax increment financing, other economic development tools. And you could very much tie, and close economic gaps, you could very much tie that to the idea of a separate district taxing authority, which is also in the E-zone, which isn't really mentioned. So I think keeping this, I think what clarifies it is that it says it's Appendix C. All Appendix C is just some data. It's not been adopted by anybody. This doesn't even adopt the plan. It just adopts the plan as an appendix that we look at it. So.
Any other comments on the motion to amend?
Go ahead.
Silly question, I just want to clear the air. If we own property in the E-zone, we don't have a conflict of interest on this, do we?
No, in order to have a conflict of interest, you have to have a special private gain. There's a lot of property owners within the E-zone, so it's not just special to you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Call for a vote on all those in favor of the motion to amend?
Aye.
Aye.
I
So we
did.
have-
Passed.
Yeah,
Are we doing roll call or just everybody
Yeah,
at
let's
once?
have a roll call vote on that
All in
one.
favor? Or?
okay.
All in favor? We'll do a roll
Clarify the
call.
Mr. Chairman, could you clarify the motion?
The motion is the motion to amend to specifically recommend a rejection of the
Roundabout.
Roundabout.
Oh, I'm so
Well,
sorry,
wait a
I didn't know
minute.
the vote.
In the E-zone master plan, because it only exists in the E-zone master plan. It no longer exists in our language. So now you're going to.
It references,
We eliminated the specifics in the Webster motion. We took
no,
out
no,
the-
we didn't.
We took
Yes,
the,
we
yes, we
did.
took the
We
language
took out the
out.
specifics,
Yeah.
Dino, by using the language that was in the little handout.
Right.
That says, construct traffic improvements consistent with the E-zone master plan, Appendix C. Okay, so it no longer references in our plan the roundabout.
And I'm very uncomfortable about starting to chip away at an E-zone plan that hasn't been adopted by the commission, but is as the mayor suggested, we're moving forward in it. I don't think that's our role in this.
Okay, well, right now, we have a motion, and the motion would involve a specific recommendation to exclude the roundabout.
That's right.
And so if you vote in favor of the motion, you're voting to exclude the roundabout as a recommended traffic calming device. And so
Okay.
do we have a
I
roll call
call for a
vote?
roll call vote.
So then you're going to want to vote no then?
Just depends on what you want.
No, if you want,
No, that's a false, that's not what the no vote designates. The no vote designates that our recommendation only references traffic considerations that are in the E-zone plan. It does not specifically.
He
But-
amended it.
Specifically mention.
But I'm specifically recommending,
what you're saying.
I think that this board, if
see
the
what you're
consensus
saying.
of this board is that we do not like the roundabout, like Mr. Williams stated, we should specify that as a recommendation along with the other recommendations that we have made.
I would
If-
prefer,
All right.
can I speak to this just one last comment?
One last
We
time.
can do that, but I don't think this motion is the appropriate place in which to do it. That's
I
all.
understand. But we have a motion, second, we're gonna do a roll call vote. A
Okay.
yes vote is a vote against the roundabout.
And to clarify, would that strike it just from policy 5.3.2, or are you trying to
It's not in
amend?
5.3.2.
Okay, so you're going beyond this plan. Okay.
And I don't know whether we can do that, whether it's appropriate for us to do that.
Well, that's a question for Carrie.
Yeah, I would say your recommendation is to this language right here.
Right.
So,
Dito, do you want your language to modify 5.3.2 to say, for example, to finish up with, however, excluding
Yes.
a traffic
Roundabout.
calming device of a roundabout?
Correct.
Okay. Do we have a second to that?
You actually have to vote on the other motion that you
All right, we
already
have-
have. You have to either withdraw it or vote on it.
Do we withdraw the prior motion?
Withdraw it, Dino.
Okay.
Okay, now
the
new
second.
language.
Now I move to insert the language you just stated.
All right, do we have a
Okay.
second?
There you go.
Do we need any further discussion on it?
Yes. A yes vote will be,
if you vote
Against
yes,
roundabout.
if you vote yes, you're voting that it will read construction traffic improvements consistent with the E-zone master plan, excluding a traffic roundabout.
yes, okay,
So, roll call vote, please.
Virginia Brown.
yes.
Dino Pasqualakis.
Yes.
David Lamont.
Yes.
Tracy Remark.
No?
Tim Kostadakis.
Yes.
Teresa Doan.
No?
Gary Libby.
No.
William Chapin.
Yes.
Daniel Webster.
No. But the motion carries.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, back to the
Okay.
Amended
original motion,
Which was, yes, we had all that. All
which
right.
is everything modified except as we just modified it.
Mhm.
Everything modified, including. what we
Including,
just-
yeah.
This will now include it, yes.
And let's have a roll call vote on that.
Virginia Brown.
Yes.
Yes.
Dino Pasqualakis.
Yes.
David Lamont.
Yes.
Tracy Remark.
Yes?
Tim Kostadakis.
Yes.
Teresa Doan.
Yes.
Gary Libby.
Yes.
William Chapin.
Yes.
And Daniel Webster.
Yes. All right.
Good, good, Jeff.
Does anybody want to take 2 minutes? Or we- let's just take a couple minutes real quick and then
It's been a
we'll
lot
be
of.
refreshed and ready to go.
I didn't mean to talk so much this meeting.
We were warned. Everybody that goes by now. Yeah, exactly.
And President,
New Smyrna gave up on theirs, so. They were busy.
Nobody's gonna die in a water taxi. There's not gonna be anything on it. But that roundabout's gonna have a lot of people. And there's some water taxis were busy. Yeah. And they had free stuff and they had money and they still couldn't.
Listen, they have roundabouts in Palm Beach, nobody gets killed. Del Rey has roundabouts.
But that's, okay, come on now. Well, you know, nobody gets killed in New Smyrna's roundabout either, but there's hardly anybody, you never see any, you never pass anybody, you know. That's where you go for it. There's no, you ever gone through the ones in New Smyrna?
Sure.
You ever pass anybody else in them?
No.
It's not A1A.
No, no. Well, La Place de la Concorde is
Oh, my God.
12 lanes of traffic.
Get a look at this. Oh, Drew decided to go on a run one morning in Paris.
Oh, the poor kid.
No, he runs. And he took a little camera with him. And he ran, we were staying right near the opera area, okay? And so he first runs up by the Louvre and snaps some pictures there and then runs up the Arc, towards the Arc de Triomphe, up the big, whatever it is.
The boulevard.
Yeah,
Yes.
and does that and taking pictures and statues and all this and takes all these pictures, and then he's turning towards the Eiffel Tower and he's running towards it and he's taking
Gets on the
pictures.
wrong side of the traffic.
No, he was doing all the way, and then he's taking pictures from behind, goes by the War Music College and all this stuff, and taking pictures, runs all the way up. Well, then he's coming back up through by the big circle there, and apparently, this is now at 7:30 in the morning.
Starting, yeah, the
And
traffic is
and,
starting.
and so he decides he and a few other runners, they're just gonna run around the circle. And they just got traffic. They just did their run now all the way up through. It was a hoot now.
Why, it's the
He went-
bigster, the press is here.
Under this, the redevelopment grant program, did you get something attached in your packet, or did you just bring, I didn't get that? No, I just brought last month's. I thought we were supposed to bring last month's. So I got two complaints. No, I didn't. Yeah, isn't that last month? I have August 4th. Oh, this one.
August 30th.
Okay, I do. All right, that's the one I brought. Okay. I think that's right. I read it as August and I thought it's last month, so I got it. And I did. I read through it and I got it. It's like, okay, since August 30th. Thank you very much.
Well, that's good. You gotta be flexible. I mean, we already discussed this. Try something.
Well, it seems like
Okay, great. I think that was minor. I just think those minor. I just think it doesn't change anything.
What is the next thing?
7A is the, no, we did 7, now we do 7A, which is this, the large-scale comp plan amendment.
Isn't this fun? Did you realize what we were getting ourselves into?
I think I'm gonna read these, and then I gotta read all this other stuff too. I'm not kidding. And then they went that on me?
I know.
I said, come on.
We can be careful volunteering, raising our hands in the future.
We're answering our phone.
So what's new? What's new?
Nothing. What with you?
Busy?
Yeah. I was up near your house the other day. I was looking at a house with a pool deck. I'm redoing my pool.
I'm sorry?
I was up near your neighborhood. Oh, yeah? Yeah. I was looking at a house, they had just put in a pool and a pool deck. Oh, good. They were a little bit west of me.
Don't have,
Yes.
don't have pools and spas of Central Florida put you in a pool.
Don't
Do
have-
not have pools and spas of Central Florida put you in a pool.
Oh, really?
You know them, of
Yeah, I
them?
do.
Do not.
Everybody I've ever heard puts this spas gets black marks.
Yeah, it's a,
I
well,
had
I've
just,
heard,
I had one put in '07. We're still, well, up until just now, I paid $9,000 to have someone come in and take care of my leaks.
they're just putting in pavers.
No,
That should be trouble-free, right?
but just don't have them. Unreliable, don't have them. Go somebody else.
Thanks. Well, I am planning to use somebody else.
Oh, okay.
You doing any traveling?
I went to Alaska.
Was it really? What do you think?
I like Alaska, but I like going to England. I like going to Europe in the summer. I do.
Did you take the inside passage in that trip? If I was to do it again, I would want to go and get off of it and go on the land tour after that.
I took an airplane ride around Denali. That was neat.
Yeah.
What did you do?
I thought for sure I had a kamikaze pilot, and we were heading right into that mountain. I swear I did.
Have you ever flown out of Albuquerque? It looks like you're going right into a mountain, and then you just go up and over it. It's the worst place to fly out of in the world, as far as I'm concerned.
You fly down between these rows of high-rises.
Yeah, you do.
And then they make 17-degree turn and they had to stop real quick because you have a runway.
Oh my God.
That's an exciting airport.
The new one is pretty wild.
I haven't been there.
You haven't seen it.
I was there in '99, maybe 2000.
Oh, what a great city.
Tom goes fishing to Alaska about every other year.
Oh, yeah,
He's
they
due
have
to go next
fishing
year.
up there.
He had his pacemaker put in, and was it 6 weeks later? He went to Alaska fishing. Yeah.
How are you feeling?
Great.
Will not conflict, this won't conflict with
That was one of the best rounds of golf I had that year. Was 6 weeks after I had.
Oh, I don't know
I keep trying to play.
You haven't been doing it? You been playing it all?
I took the summer off, but yeah, I've been playing.
We're over at
Anywhere that'll happen.
I haven't played very much, but played pretty well. And then in about 2 years, I couldn't hit a single putt that long. Something like that.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Not bad.
Are we ready? We'll reconvene. Next item is agenda item 7A, which is the large-scale comprehensive plan amendments to deal with the E-zone master plan, and I believe, Jason, you'll be doing the presentation.
Just a brief, in the planning staff, Rich Walton, who's the planning director, and Tom Wittenauer, who's prepared the document. He's here also for specific questions, but essentially just to let you understand what this addendum is. Again, we had some of this discussion previously. The comp plan is that regulatory document of which everything that the city does, we have to be in compliance with. So in terms to be able to adopt the E-zone, what the planning staff have done is gone through the comp plan thoroughly, and anywhere where there's conflicts, basically they're making suggested amendments to just reduce those conflicts so we can move forward with the E-zone. And so basically, what you have in front of you in terms of the specific language, what's in black already exists in the comp plan. What's in red is where they're proposing those amendments to ensure there's consistency between what we're doing in the redevelopment plan and what's in the comp plan. So if there's any questions, Tom or Rich are here to answer them.
I guess I have a question on page 21, under policy 2, the amended language, I don't think is really clear. That raises the question again, Mr. Chairman.
Page 21 and policy.
Well,
Oh, okay, I see.
the E-zone overlay land use designation allows retail development along the riverfront property on the north side of Main Street between South Halifax and the river, when development satisfies land use, et cetera, et cetera. I guess maybe a map would clarify that.
Yes.
On what you exactly
So-
mean, because there were residents on North Halifax that assumed by that change, and I guess there's one other, that an individual property owner living in the estate, in one of the estate houses along South Halifax could opt to sell his or her property for retail development in the middle of a block or anywhere between Main Street and Oak Ridge Boulevard.
That language makes a reference to the E-zone, which is in the map on the very last page.
Which is,
And it, in shading, shows you the E-zone. So that particular language that's being added in will only deal with those properties on the riverfront that are in the E-zone.
your very last page should be a map,
All right, I see.
which is added as
So that'd
well.
be the restaurant on the north side and then the vacant lot or parking lot on the south side.
Okay.
Okay.
I think to be consistent with what we just did, page 72, policy 1.4.4 says constructive traffic improvements such as traffic calming roundabout at Main Street and A1A. So we need to amend that.
That will bring that up.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have
for
a,
staff?
yeah,
Tracy?
page 23, the second red paragraph during administration, rights from the following publicly and privately owned property to private, where's the list? What following publicly and privately owned property? What are we referring to? What properties? It says, during administration of the E-zone master plan, the city will reprogram development rights from the following public, what following?
Yeah, maybe I think there needs to be some change. I know that has to deal with the
I'm
building.
sure we're talking about the Ocean Center
TDR.
and what, I know,
Right.
but if we're gonna say
Specifically.
these properties,
The following, just
Yeah.
strike out the following and insert from certain or some publicly
Something like-
privately owned
okay.
property, you know.
Okay.
and then I had a question about the TDR, because that's what we're talking about here, right?
Yes.
Transfer of development rights. And I don't know if that's something that's in here, but I was curious, do transferring development rights from public property to private, do they bring money into the city coffers, or is it something like a street vacation where we're just giving away things that we're not getting reimbursed for?
Rich Walton, Planning Director. Right now, we have a policy in our comp plan talking about transfer development rights, and that we would develop the program by 2012.
Okay.
That will be still developed by 2012. It'll be done as part of the form-based zoning overlay, so those details haven't been worked out.
Okay.
But it absolutely could be transferred. I think the language we're suggesting to the consultant to start is that the city commission would kind of keep a running tally of the pre-development rights. We are certain the final development rights will be less. Certainly could sell development rights from one property to the other. So I don't know that there's an answer that it would necessarily be private in the end or public in the end, or how it would work. It would kind of depend. Really, it's going to probably even be project by project that's going to determine that. But the program of what the TDR and how it works will be part of the form-based zoning code.
Is that program just going to be some internal policy, or a board's going to see it?
My suggestion is that the consultant draft that, so the city commission would be keeping tally of that, and each time there's a project, they would see that, they would.
No, but I mean, are boards going to have any input on that policy before it gets to a commission on how they're going to adopt it?
As part of the form-based zoning code, absolutely, that would come
Okay.
here, yes,
All right.
yes.
All right. All right.
And in that spreadsheet with all of the steps, that is coming to all of the boards, yes.
Okay,
That's just
okay.
the next stage of
All right.
the details that'll be worked
All right.
out.
Then I would also, I do agree with how Gary reworded that, because that,
Sure, yeah,
Either need
absolutely.
to li-
Yes, yes.
and then I would just say, I just had one thing, just very clear, that was in our staff report, which I assume the staff report's going to also go to the planning board. But again, so it's on the record, the commission did not adopt this plan. And our staff report is saying they adopted the E-zone. We're not doing this based on an adopted plan. We're doing it based on the fact that the commission, in their resolution 11-151, approved it and then authorized staff to take the necessary steps for adoption and implementation of the plan. So I think that's really
The
clear.
intent is to follow that
To follow
resolution.
that
We'll
resol-
have
I
that
just wanted that as
resolution
part
there.
of the
The
record.
commission approved the resolution.
Right.
What the resolution said is what it says. I mean,
Yes, okay,
we
great.
will, thank you.
Gary?
Rich, is there some reference in here to specifically to the new park that was purchased by the city that's south of Main Street? I
That-
can't find it right now, but I know I read that the city is suggesting.
I'm not sure if that was in here because we just gave you the pages that were
Where did I read
specific.
It was in the other
In the other
redevelopment.
document.
in one of these.
It's in the redevelopment.
And that's when that idea of transfer development rights happened. We committed when we got the grant from the state to make that area park as part of that money, that we didn't want to lose those development rights. We would transfer those, and that's when that first was introduced.
Okay, so you're.
So we're just kind of expanding, correct.
Physically the park.
No, no,
You're
no.
just transferring
The rights.
development. Okay.
And that's why the city actually would own those rights, and the city commission, I think, should probably be the keeper of assigning those or selling those, or
It concurs with that. I'm
the
sure.
state was very happy.
It ensures the park exists. for the
Yes,
public.
exactly.
Any other questions or comments? Any public comments with respect to the comp plan amendment?
I'll move,
Well,
want a motion? Or you gotta
before you get to
summarize?
that, yeah, I'd like to go through a little summarize, because I'd like to try and propose some things that are consistent with what we just did on the other plan. The first requested revision will be that also, wherever you have a footnote in here that relates to what is going to be the Appendix A, which is the E-zone plan, I believe, yes, that you put the text identifying the page and reference from the E-zone up into the body where you're going to delete the footnote, so that we'll know where the provision came from. And we've clarified that this only relates to the E-zone as within the little
Map.
that's attached. And that does not include any of Industrialist Row. On page 23, the second red paragraph, which reads, during the administration of the E-zone, the language on the second line that reads, from the following publicly, the words "the following" shall be stricken and replaced with "certain." And to be consistent, on page 72, with respect to policy 1.4.4, dealing with the traffic calming, that,
Actually, just.
why don't we just say that we revise that to use the same language that was in the approved
Appendix.
Main Street redevelopment plan amendment that was just approved.
That's fine. So moved.
We're gonna take them all together.
That was all I had.
All right, then I'll move, we adopt those changes as summarized by the chair.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just be clear, we're adopting the whole plan with your,
Yes.
okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous? Next, we have the Land Development Code rewrite.
Grants?
How about the
Grant.
Did I
grant?
pass something? Oh,
8.
8. Grant programs. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm trying. The grant program, who's presenting?
I'll present.
If Jason's doing all the presenting, why do we have Reed here?
He keeps them in line.
I'll keep it
Jason
real
said
brief,
the
my
same
comment.
thing.
In terms of the grant, basically we talked about this last month, kind of gave you a brief overview. What you now have are the specific changes, again, the cross-through underlying changes that are being made to the grant programs. Basically, this was a need to refocus the incentive programs to recruit retail, restaurant, and businesses, visible exterior improvements, and to encourage home ownership. That's basically what we're trying to do in these changes. In terms of the residential grant program, it's limiting the facade program to homeowner properties. There are, you'll see in the residential programs, there are incentives to convert non-homesteaded properties and multifamily residential to homeowner-occupied single-family. Focus on exterior facade improvements by the changes, by striking the ability to use roofs, strike the ability to use grant funds for the replacement of roofs, and then also to ensure all improvements are done to comply with the design standards as part of the application. In the commercial grant programs, again, we're limiting the commercial facade programs to visible exterior improvements. Only taxable properties are eligible for the grants. And then there's a proposal for when it comes to the business facade, leasehold improvement, and lease subsidy programs, for those to be focused into the E-zone. But the commercial facade grant, I think this is somewhat, Mr. Lamont, what you're bringing up before, the commercial facade grant would still be available throughout the redevelopment area. It's just those specific new programs that are targeted to the E-zone.
I just think that needs, the language needs to be rewritten because that's not clear. Like on page 2, item number 3 at the top, business facade grant and leasehold improvement grant change the target area to the E-zone. So as we just went through on the last item, the E-zone was what was on that map, shaded in the outline map that we had.
I'm sorry, are you looking at the staff memo?
No, just going back to the land,
Could we hold 1 second while I think she's changing tapes?
There was no tape.
Oh, there's no.
It's saying that it's false.
That's-
It was the recording was coming.
Page 2 of the memorandum.
So you're
Page 2 of the
you're full.
memo.
Okay.
It's being videotaped,
It's
so.
being videotaped. Okay. All right. Very good. Thanks, Reed.
all I was saying was, Jason, on the last item on the agenda that we, on the map that was on the very last page.
Okay,
Okay, that has the E-zone specifically outlined.
right.
And this is change the target area to the E-zone.
Mhm.
If you read that right, then anything outside that E-zone is
Isn't
not
eligible.
Right, for those specific programs. What I'm saying, there's, what you have is a packet of several different grant programs. When it comes to the commercial facade program, that is still available throughout the entire redevelopment area. It's the business facade grant and the leasehold improvement, which are programs designed specifically to attract new business. Those are targeted to the E-zone. Again, that was about focusing.
Okay, but there again, brings my question, why would you not want to merge to the redevelopment area outside to bring in new businesses?
Well, and if that's.
Instead of just using just E-zone, just make it the whole Main Street redevelopment.
Well, I understand what you're saying. I guess the concept is in terms of getting more effective in terms of our grant programs, we wanted to focus those those business attraction programs to a specific area.
Limited dollars.
Right. Limited dollars to target the impact that we can have. If you don't agree, I mean, the board, you can make a recommendation, but that's generally, that was the thinking behind it, was with the limited dollars to target those specific new programs to a specific area. We do the same thing in the downtown area. It's been very effective And a matter of fact, just going back to some of our analysis, these programs, I think what you're thinking of is this. We have always had for a long time, the city has had the residential facade grant program and the commercial facade program that applied to the entire redevelopment area. 2 years ago, the CRA adopted new business programs with a specific purpose, the grants to attract targeted businesses into targeted areas in the redevelopment areas. When we did the Main Street area, it was very broad. Currently, it's like along all commercial corridors. In the downtown area, it is very focused on the Beach Street area, and it's been very effective. When we kind of compare how it's working in downtown versus how it's working in Main Street, we're seeing us having more success in downtown, and part of the reason is because it's focused on in a specific area in the redevelopment area versus what's currently in the Main Street area. It's very broad, and it's not.
No, I just think you're leaving yourself, the city's leaving itself open to a lot
Well,
of problems.
you got to remember, we can mend these programs from time to time. So as we get the synergy going on in the E-zone, we can always then broaden and target a different area at a later time. So we might come back to you in a couple of years and say, okay, let's now broaden this to along the line.
Jay, we're not going to wait 2 years. You've got some information on Delray Beach, I don't know, about several months ago. There are other programs we want to bring to you. We're not ready for that right now. But there are other things as we're developing the C-zone that we're going to want to bring some other grants that will be more tailored to the need. And whether that's ISB or A1A or the E-zone. So I think, we've been trying to educate ourselves about some of the more successful programs, and we still need to do better than what we have, but this is primarily to get more focus. And again, like you said, there's less money to go around right now. We need to keep it focused.
Now, the money from the.
I wasn't confused until you started talking. Okay. Now, is the facade program going to go away from the rest of the Main Street area?
No.
Okay, so I think what Dave's saying is that maybe we should differentiate the two, and because right now, the way, like he says, this reads, it makes you think that there is no facade grant there anymore, that all the money's gonna be focused into the E-zone, which the E-zone does not encompass the whole Main Street redevelopment area. So I think maybe.
Except that you have something called, right before that, the Commercial Facade Grant Program.
Right.
And
On
that's-
page 1.
That's the entire redevelopment area commercial district.
But yeah, but when you read into that, when you do the third one, change the target area to the E-zone on number 3 at the top of the other
Just
page.
for that one.
That's a separate program.
That's a separate program. Just the Business Facade Grant Program.
What we will-
That's to sort of help jumpstart the E-zone as part of this.
Then maybe in number 2, it should say the E-zone and the Main Street redevelopment area. Because
It could be.
No, maybe number 2
it
should be.
needs to be clarified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about number 2 be called the E-zone commercial grant facade? I mean, the E-zone commercial facade grant. That way you're giving it a different title to
It's just giving you
your
the impression that
existing.
it's being excluded.
It would be
it's just
number
the way it
3.
reads.
I agree, and in a marketing, when we actually put these together and put that marketing piece,
When you
like
have
you've
the-
seen in
the
the past,
brochure,
yeah.
we'll make it real clear, this is E-zone, this is the whole Main Street area.
Yeah, it
But
comes
it
in a
shouldn't be
whole
cl-
folded brochure.
Well, I know, but shouldn't it be clear in this before we get to a
It should be
brochure?
crystal clear. Yeah, it
Yes.
should be.
We'll
deal with that.
We'll
We'll change the language.
Well, I think you're focusing on the memo. You need to
Yeah.
look at, this is just, you're not
This is the
adopting.
language.
Oh, you're not
You're not
adopting the
adopting
memo,
the
okay.
staff memo, you're adopting the
see
stuff
what you're
behind
Yeah,
it.
well,
Do
we're
you
just
have
gonna
one of
change
your
the title of
little-
the one program.
Yeah.
Gary?
Mr. Chairman, there is an eligibility question about 501c3s, and I'd like to ask Mr. Berger to share with us how that will not affect the ongoing, one of the most successful partnerships that we've had in the redevelopment area, and that's with Pinewood Cemetery. Could you share how the ineligibility of not-for-profits will not affect our ongoing work with Pinewood?
Right, it's not so much about the not-for-profits, it's about the commitment that the city has made, and it's also in your redevelopment plan, as well as in our budget, where we have a provision where we fund the ongoing maintenance and restoration of Pinewood Cemetery. So those are expenses that came up in the audit, and so we just have to very specifically outline each year what it is that we're doing. Eventually, we hope to wean ourselves off of that commitment, but at this point, we've had a commitment up to $25,000 for the Pinewood Cemetery in 1 year.
That will continue as long as it's budgeted, recommended by us and authorized by the CRA.
That's correct. Well, by the CRA, yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions related to these specific proposed amendments? All right.
How do you allocate the dollars? Is there a pool of funds for all of these grants, and then the first come, first served, or each grant type gets a certain amount of dollars?
It's a first come, first serve. We
And
keep
it's
track.
allocated by the commission,
Yeah.
It's-
acting as the CRA, correct?
But
No.
some are
Or
line
it's
items,
allocated
so it's,
actually in the
Some
budget.
are built into
Budget.
other plans and have other, extra points. I don't know how to put it, other than that.
What we do, and I'll give you an example, we have residential grants and we have commercial grants, and we allocate dollars into those two. And so whatever applies for commercial residential, we draw down on it till we get to the bottom.
And when you say "we," you mean the commission, when they set their budget?
They set the
These are all part
budget.
of the budget, right?
All part of the budget, that's the commission.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Acting as the CRA.
All right. I think that the only real concern we've got is with respect to the business facade grant program, and that it be relabeled the E-Zone Business Facade Grant Program.
When you get to page one, if it's eligibility, it clearly states the downtown Main Street Blue, South Atlantic, Midtown. So all those redevelopment areas are eligible, so we probably should.
Oh, I see what you're saying,
So
okay.
we should
It's
probably just add
mul-
the E-zone overlay into that, to incorporate that. Maybe.
Well, no,
Well,
that's
no.
the whole,
Yeah,
It's,
Well, that's
it's,
the facade program, and then
it's a facade program that applies more than just to the beach side.
Right, all these programs
Okay.
apply to all redevelopment areas.
right.
All right, then
But,
scratch my comment.
Right, that's our.
Oh, I
Okay.
see what you're saying.
but
Okay.
under eligibility in each program, it tells you what area it's targeted.
Actually, you guys, if you look at the business facade grant, the eligibility, Main Street redevelopment area, ... E-zone.
Yeah, I think we should just add the
It-
E-zone in there.
It's in there.
Oh, what page is that on?
It's under the language. Page 1, under business facade grant
Yeah.
program. It's in there.
Yeah,
It says E-zone.
Yeah.
So what you're saying right now is already in there, and it's also under the leasehold improvement grant,
Under the eligibility.
which is, you gotta have to go to that particular grant, where it says business facade grant at the top.
Page number.
Well, it's,
Page 1 of the business facade grant.
Oh, I'm looking at commercial.
Right, that's what I was,
That's why you can't find it.
because that's not limited to the E-Zone.
right,
Do
so,
we have a motion?
motion to adopt.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Carries unanimously. All right, now moving on to the revised, to the Land Development Code rewrite.
You want to do the summary?
No.
Page by page, Dan?
I think we've covered what Bill needed to be here for, and I think we'll excuse him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much.
Nice to see you, Bill.
All right, Jason, you going to do the presentation on this?
I am going to give you a brief overview.
Overview?
Get any of your comments. I think we have more opportunities as we move forward for you to continue to look, but what I'm going to do is point out the sections that are probably most pertinent to the redevelopment area that we'd like you to focus on. What the downtown board did yesterday is I think they're going to reschedule this again, take the month to keep on looking at it further, and then come back and talk about it the next month. So that's not.
Because I understand this is early in the process, and they're going to be actually initiating the process starting late September, October, just starting receiving input in September.
Well, their process is, at the end of this month, on September 26th, there is the subcommittee is going to meet to take the comments. And I believe
27th
is
the
the
public
27th?
meeting. Is the public meeting, and the 26th is the subcommittee meeting.
Okay, 20, I'm sorry. But there's an opportunity for the public to have input. You know, you're welcome to attend that and put your input in.
Either one.
The staff will be gathering the comments from there and taking them, providing them to Clarion. The staff is still reviewing this also, and I think there's an opportunity as you review the document, it can be collapsed into the comments that we are making as redevelopment staff to Clarion.
Okay.
And then what you're saying about the process continues on, there's obviously opportunities for changes as the next module comes in. Also, there's going to be an adoption process too.
So we'll go ahead and give us the brief overview.
Yes, it'll be very brief. The four areas that we're looking at here with these two modules that are now in is the board duties, which is Article 2, the review process in Article 3, the development standards in Article 4, and the permitted and conditional uses for those zoning districts in Article 5. What I would do in terms of board duties, basically the board duties for the redevelopment boards is in section 2.3. This is page 26. I would tab that and basically focus in on the redevelopment boards. If you have any comments, essentially the duties of the redevelopment boards has been carried forward from our existing code. There's just some clarifications in there.
Well, those are what we're interested in.
I'm sorry, what?
The clarifications are what we're interested in.
Well, yeah.
There are some clarifications, but what are they?
Well, the clarifications we're dealing with, I think if you look at our existing code, it talks about the redevelopment board. I think our current code only specifically says you make recommendations to planning board on special use permits. Now, it has become our practice that when it comes to zoning amendments, zoning text changes, the redevelopment boards, we do bring those things to this redevelopment board. So their clarification is they're putting that into the code that you do make recommendations on amendments in redevelopment areas,
Are there
plan developments.
eliminations of current
No.
responsibilities?
No.
But there are additional ones added.
Right.
Correct. Okay.
Well, clarification, I mean, it's things as practice we are doing, they're just clarifying it in the document. And then one thing, and I kind of pointed this out to the downtown board earlier, you might want to take a look at the memberships. The memberships of the board is in here. This came out of a lot of discussion that happened a couple years ago. You know, we have a lot of very specific duties. One thing we have found is difficulty finding members for the redevelopment areas, Blue Road, the very heavily commercial districts, South Atlantic and Blue Road. Might be something the board might want to weigh in or look at a change on that.
And actually, as the planning board subcommittee person, I'd be really interested in how this board felt about the fact that there are term limits, given how hard it is. The only term limited boards are the redevelopment boards in the city. So just for next month, if you think about that, that would be very helpful to know.
Mr. Chairman, some of the newer members of the board fell victim to the qualifications and the restrictions and the definitions of eligibility, and I think that...
Really look at those closely.
Honestly, I think we need to look at it. It needs to be simplified and opened up and made easier, not harder. Right now, I mean, you have to be a left-footed Polish person with red hair and one green eye in order to qualify.
And then you can only sit here for 2 years.
Yeah,
And then we have to
only
find
2
the
years.
next
So
person.
I would like, I don't know if you want to do this as a committee of the whole or have a subcommittee to work with the staff or have the staff come back to us with some modifications. I mean, some of the distinctions for eligibility are razor thin.
Well, here's what I'd like to suggest. I'd like to suggest that we maybe go through the 2.3 and discuss some specific concerns on that tonight. With respect to other comments, I think as a board, we can wait on that, maybe even reduce them to writing for submission and such, because they can be very detailed and they don't directly relate to this board. But I think there's some issues within what's being proposed here, the term limits, the qualifications, what we should be looking at.
Well, this is what I'm talking about.
Exactly. And so I think we can go through those and kind of make a list and say, look, these are things that we're already raising as an issue that we should see changed.
I'd love to hear from the staff, looking at other redevelopment boards in active and dynamic parts of the state that are doing similar work. How are they structured? Do they have term limits? Do they have these razor-thin distinctions between living in the district, owning a business in the district, visiting the district, having been in the district, all these different things?
Well, first of all, I haven't researched that kind of detail about the qualifications, eligibility. Part of the problem is that, for the most part, we don't find a lot of these advisory boards. There's no statutory requirement for an advisory board for these redevelopment agencies. So in many cases, communities have a redevelopment agency and that's it. They don't have an advisory board to that agency. So there's not a whole lot, but we've never gone back.
That's often because some of those with independent redevelopment boards actually have authority
Well,
and
that-
do the voting as opposed to the city commission.
Right, right. That's part of it, and part of it is just simply that even in the smaller ones, particularly, there's just one group, the commission, that's going to act to do everything, to administer grants, whatever, and they don't necessarily have an advisory group. They might hear from an economic development advisory board that's part of a city. But again, it's not a formal structure in a lot of these cities we've looked at.
More comfortable if we came up with some general.
Well, yeah, I mean, staff can do some research on this, Jason. We can, yeah, Jason, the workhorse here, that we can look around at the ones we do know of, and like you said, some of the ones where we know that these are more dynamic, successful redevelopment agencies, and see what makes them tick at that level in terms of eligibility, qualification.
I'm probably not the oldest person who has lived in the city for a length of time, but very often the qualifications were developed for us to respond to a specific audience, or even sometimes a specific person. And then you wind up living with this crazy quilt that really doesn't translate to the 2011, the way it worked in 1985.
Right.
And I think it behooves us to make it easier, not harder. You saw how the commission struggled over this last set of appointments because of eligibility issues and a whole series of why unknowns, trigonometry again. I think there must be a simpler way. I don't know whether the downtown board has simplified the characteristics, the qualities, the qualifiers to serve, but I think the whole city really needs to look at what is eligibility in service on an advisory board in the redevelopment areas.
Yeah, I would say that the downtown board has the same problem has a similar structure that you have here, where you have the main redevelopment area, which is the Main Street area, and then you have the additional very commercial districts, very specific to Southland, same thing downtown versus Blue Road, and they have problems finding someone to do it for the Blue Road area is always difficult.
We know statutorily that one board can't spend the money of another board. I mean, we know that. We've already decided that, but yet who is eligible to serve on the boards still there has to be a simpler way to do this.
Well, do you have a recommendation as to how it be done?
I would love to come back with
Okay, so you
recommendations.
You think we should just kind of think about and let me tell you the issues that I think need to be addressed, and that's what this board reviews and such. I'd like to see this board get involved in review of the plans for Bike Week and Biketoberfest, to see those before they go to the city commission. I'd like to see the board involved in any special permits in which we involve closing down of streets for street parties and such, and give we can't approve them or deny them, but we certainly can give input on those with respect to how they're going to be using the streets within Main Street and such and closing them down. I just think that we should be involved in, they want to do that, they should come in and say this is the plan and get our feedback before they proceed, because that'll come up to something I want to address with respect to noise and such later on. But I think that's something we could have an effect on with respect to how the area is conducting its business.
Well, responsibility is another area. Eligibility to serve is what I've been talking about, but I agree with you. There might be a review of some of the responsibilities. Now that we're trying to move really forward at a quicker pace in the redevelopment area and the E-zone, there obviously are gonna have to be some changes. Somebody's gonna have to look at these things.
Okay.
And maybe this board in the short term is the appropriate place to do that. I think you might be right.
Okay, so consensus is we'll come back next month and talk about specifics as how we would like to see our role or this board's role get tweaked one way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good.
I have a question.
Can you put the mic closer to you?
This land development code, it's been rewritten, I take it? And I apologize, but I am the new kid on the block, so I have license to ask all these stupid questions, but.
This is the
No
first
such
draft of a proposed rewrite.
Okay, so how do we know what's new on it? I mean, at least on the other document, you gave it to us in red.
Oh,
That's what we asked for.
I know you did, but, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, where do we begin on something this size
they-
without any references to what's
I understand what you're
different?
saying. They did footnote. If you look at the footnotes, they tell you what they've done. And actually, if you want me to continue, I could give you some basic framework. What I was going to tell you, what has been carried forward and where there are some changes.
Well, and at the very least, I would appreciate, those slides you had that sort of outlined the areas that you changed, because I don't think I saw that before tonight. But, I mean, I'm just looking for some.
Mm-hmm.
Some comparison.
Thank you, yes. I mean, I mean, I
If I may
have a
make a
job, and I like to do
suggestion
things in my personal time.
Even that's going to be difficult. What I do is I just go through and see things that I think I want to look at, and I see if what they're proposing makes sense, and yes or no, and not, because there are so many, for them to try to do a red line to what
Okay.
was there before is
Yeah.
impossible on this.
But could they do like the outline that you showed in the slides?
They can certainly give you the slides and
Yeah.
Because that sort of listed the things I thought that you,
that
Oh,
you should
yes.
focus on.
Yes.
oh, that he had up there
Yes.
just earlier.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
that was
Oh.
very helpful. Your PowerPoint,
My-
just give your PowerPoint
Oh, I thought, okay.
page.
I'm sorry. I thought it's not passed out. Okay.
No.
Well, what we could do is email it to you, or,
that's fine.
yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Reed will do that.
Okay, boss.
And is there a zoning map with this?
So, should I move to table item 9?
Not yet.
Not
I'll
yet.
get to
There
that.
was no
So-
action being called on it.
Okay.
No, there's no zoning.
We don't really know. Okay.
There, it actually doesn't change the city zoning map, so if you have an old one, it adds some new zoning areas, but,
Okay.
Yeah, let me,
If
I'll
you-
I'll
yeah.
get to that with the.
yeah.
If you're done with I'll move on to the review procedures is in Article 3, and I think you're beginning to talk about that. That's page 3.3, gives you a nice chart where it kind of lays out a matrix of what each board is responsible for. One of the things, let's see, in terms of land LDC amendments, when it comes to the text amendment, there's no review by the redevelopment board. There is review by the map amendments, historic overlays, where it might affect the redevelopment area, and plan development. One thing what I'm already going to point out to Clarion is there probably needs to be some clarification that when it comes to text amendments to the code, the redevelopment boards need to be involved with that, especially where it affects the redevelopment areas. There are many instances, I don't know if I've had it here, but I know there are land development code changes that even are initiated at the redevelopment board level and then are taken up through the process. In terms of development approvals, special use permits, there's a recommendation by the review by the redevelopment board public and semi-public use permits, there currently is no review. I think that's something we're going to have some clarification by the, by Clarion. Decisions, on major site plans, that is where the board makes a decision on that. So you're the final decision maker on a major site plan approval. And this basically, what's in there now reflects the changes that were made in the last year, where we made some changes to our current code. You remember there was a lot of debate about that. Originally, the proposal was to be consistent with the entire city, where the review would be at 20,000 square feet or above. But currently what's in here is all new construction.
Is that going to stay?
For now, or yes, I guess that's, yes.
Yes, that's staying.
It can, anything can be amended from time to time, but yes. The minor site plans, that would be staff review. That's essentially where somebody is an existing building and their site plans required, but it's no new construction, but their site plans required because they're moving into a vacant, vacant existing structure. Certificate of appropriateness, there's no review by the board. That's like a technical review really by the historic board. Subdivision plats, that's another technical review. So there's no review by the board. Tree review is a staff review. Special event permit, I think that's what you're referring to before. There's currently no review by the redevelopment boards. And then building permits, obviously that's where somebody just comes in, wants to make an improvement to their building, doesn't require a site plan, it's just a minor improvement, that's a staff review. In terms of relief procedures, again, going back to those changes that were made in the last year, the appeals of the redevelopment board decisions, that's still in there. The one issue that I'll be requesting of Clarion some clarification in our current code under Article 18, and I believe you've dealt with one of these. If there's a staff decision of design, somebody comes in for a building permit and we deny a permit because staff determines it's not in conformance with the design review, there is a procedure currently somebody can appeal staff's decision to the board. Right. I can't remember if we've had one of those recently here. I know we've had a couple in the downtown board, but that's something that's not being reflected in this document and probably needs to be addressed to have that, continue to have that relief procedure for somebody trying to make an improvement to their building. So is there any questions on procedures? If not, I'll go on to Article 4, which deals with these are actually the zoning districts. And if you look at page, starting at page 460, this starts the zoning districts in the Main Street redevelopment area. Currently, we have specific zoning districts in the Main Street area. We have 8 of them, RDB 1 through 8.
I know it's online, but in the future, is there, I guess we should just print it, or can we be provided a map so that when we're talking about RDB1, we can be actually looking at RDB1?
Yeah, for next month, we can provide you the map.
Okay, thanks.
The current. Now, what I want to say in terms of related zoning districts, you have the existing 8 zoning districts. They do not cover the entire redevelopment area. So in addition to the 8, we are proposing, basically we're proposing to carry those 8 forward, keep them the same, and then adding 3 new zoning districts that would then deal with the areas where we have some outdated zoning district, and to have some specific zoning to deal with, to have criteria that would be more reflective of what we're trying to achieve in the redevelopment area.
And you need all of the 8 basic ones.
I actually like that.
They're, at this point, yes.
I like that you're proposing an RDB 9 special corridor for the International Speedway
Right.
Boulevard.
And
That way you could,
Right.
you could in the future come out with a target area with an incentive plan.
Right.
It's a lot, there are a lot, and many of them are contiguous to each other with the zoning changes.
You know, there are several zoning districts that have a lot of similarities, but then there's this, when it comes to, I think, for instance, I think between, hopefully I got this, I think between the RDB2 and RDB3, those are both along Main Street, and even to some, well, let's stick with those two, those are along Main Street. The RDB2 is very reflective of the Main Street built, you know, Main Street look we're trying to achieve in the Main Street area. The only difference between the 2 and the 3 is more reflective as you get closer to the river, allows some of the auto related use. And that's something, you know, if the board wants to weigh in and discuss, but that's basically when you look at the differences between RDB2 and RDB3, that's the difference between the two, is that the RDB3, as you get closer, allows the more auto-related uses.
That's madness. That, you know, again, it's probably not the time to discuss a philosophical discussion, but if we're going to value up the riverfront, maybe automotive isn't the best adjacent use. And that's I guess that's a bigger decision.
Those discussions you can have later and through this process, I would say. And, you know, we encourage the feedback of the Main Street Board on that.
When did you add the off-site information solicitation booths to the redevelopment areas?
Okay, now this is an interesting, and this is, even Clarion is having trouble with this. The way our current code,
I don't like it. I mean,
well,
Do you know where you at in there?
okay, I'm sorry. If you look at page 4-71, you know, I saw this and I'm like, wait a second, you know, it's called 5B off-site information / solicitation booths on page 4-71, and I've never seen that
okay,
before.
now, this is the issue that we're running into, and I think Clarion, I think people, we that work here and work with this code all the time, eventually learn how it works, but when somebody's outside is trying to convert it to a new format, they sometimes are mixing and matching way our code, and it's problematic, and that's what they're trying to solve. If you look at Article 12, the current Article 12 in the
This is correct.
no,
No.
this is proposed in the binder. Then if you look at the current code, Article 12 is where these redevelopment zoning districts are, and the way it functions, there's a couple flaws in it. One is something I know when I first came in, the use chart has things, for instance, as it talks about residential density increased up to 40 units per acre as a use in the RDB3. Well, that's not a use, that's just a development standard criteria. They're mixing, it just was not written right, and Clarion, in their best efforts, is trying to fix that, and as staff, we're helping them in that process. So there's going to be some, as we go along this process, there's going to be some mix matches.
But specifically to the solicitation.
And then,
Right.
well, hold on. I just want to tell you the kind of overview what we're dealing with, and you find these.
And
Please
specifically, I did not like the
hold on.
solicitation booth. I chased them
As we
back.
point those out, and then the other thing that goes on in this code, it has these conditions that are in the use charts that then refer back to Section 5, and it's just like this laundry list of numbers. And then you're supposed to look in the use chart and just go to particular numbers. And what Clarion's trying to do is clean that up so it's easier to use. But in doing that, they're translating, they miss things. And you are right, specifically, RDB4 currently does allow off-premise solicitation booths. So they do have it right.
That was part in the.
That's current.
Yeah, I don't know that happened back in the 90s when we moved to try to rein in and the ramping up and down the street. So just the freelance guys that were going up and down the streets.
Or going up and down the beach.
Up and down the beach
Yeah.
and coming up
But
on
when we did
A1A.
that, we designated a public spot like
Well,
a little
on-
square.
On the boardwalk you did.
Right.
But I know it, but there's also where
There's also
there's
Ocean Walk,
A1A,
there's also A1.
Ocean
yeah.
Avenue and A1A, those commercial corridors there was exceptions made.
Okay, so in other words, it was trying to eliminate the roaming.
Right.
Okay.
But it's still going on, the roaming.
Right.
Something
There's
that,
no enforcement on the
there's no
road.
enforcement of that whatsoever.
Okay, all right, I understand now, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So that's basically just, I do encourage you to look through the details. If you see things like that, you feel like, well, what's this doing here? It could be a transcriber's mistake, and so we do need to, and that's, staff, as we go through it, that's what we're trying to do. The intent is when it comes to the RDB 1 through 8, they're supposed to carry through exactly as they are. But of course, as a board, this is your opportunity to kind of look at these. If there's modifications that you think we need to make, this is the time to
But
make
we-
those comments.
So we have the revised, but some of the members have the copies of the land development code and some don't.
You mean the existing code?
Yeah, I mean, for me to make a comparison.
Yeah, we have nothing to compare it to.
You know what we could do?
Won't share hers.
Maybe what'll help you, we can at least provide you a copy of Article 12.
Yeah.
That's all you need. isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's no way, like
Right.
I said, that was news to me, and now you know.
Come on. Reed has two things
All right,
to do now.
Jason, let's go.
Okay.
All right, everybody, let's get
That's
late.
basically, and then in Article 5, I would suggest, that's now the uses, the use chart. So I would look at page 5-14 provides the uses. And again, when it comes to the existing zoning districts, you're carrying forward those uses as they are currently. And then you got the 3 new districts. I would just look at those in terms of there's consistency of what should be the allowed uses permitted, or is there a use that should be conditional use in those zoning districts?
But we need a map to look at that.
Yeah. Well, now when it comes to the new districts, we don't necessarily have a map yet. We can give you a generalized, this is where we're thinking where it may go, but I don't, the intent here is, these are placeholders in the new code. We'd have to actually go through a zoning map amendment for those new zoning districts
Okay.
to apply them to those areas. That is my presentation, unless there's
Okay.
anything specific.
With the understanding we'll be coming back to this, any specific comments needed tonight? Thank you. Thanks. Reed, anything we need to know about the ISB streetscape
Yeah,
update?
it's been delayed. I don't think we'll meet until the end of the month with CPH to look at some different concepts to create more of a wow factor than perhaps what we were originally intending. So we're going through some different looks.
And we're gonna get to see those looks once
You'll
they
get those as soon as
appointed?
we decide whether or not we have a way to start affording a higher look.
Okay.
We'll let you know.
Then the redevelopment projects update?
Just real quickly, that land that you're seeing on the right side of the bridge as you come over from downtown and you look to your right, and that's land that we purchased. Some of the buildings there, we are still proposing to tear them down. It's going to take a little longer. As you know, South Atlantic is broke. It takes really the general fund or someone else to pay for that, and until we really understand what we're doing the budget and where revenues sit, I think we'll be making a decision there whether we launch. Meantime, we've had a lot of environmental review so that we get that demolition bid. I think it's a couple inches thick now for just doing this work. But we need to get that site ready. And in the meantime, we've been to that retail conference down at Kissimmee, and we'll continue that work to be more assertive in looking for retailers, commercial development. And so we're talking developers and others who might be able to come in here and have an interest. In any case, we may RFP this if we start to pick up some interest on that property. we did have some interest initially about a year ago, and it waned very rapidly because of some demographic issues. So we're going to go back and deal with that. Main Street lighting, just to let you know that did get upgraded. So if you're down on Main Street, yeah, I know we got more to deal with, but just some progress. Bay trees, I thought I had some information here to share with you on the bay trees, but yeah, here it is. Did any of you get a water bill, or if you're not in the city, you might not see this, but there's information about bay trees.
Yeah, the orientation board for that.
So I think the beautification board did some work on this and put the information on the website. So hopefully that helps a little more in addressing that issue.
With the bay trees, since I know, I said with the bay trees, since our code officer wasn't here and I was going to bring this up, they need to really concentrate on getting rid of these, getting the property owners to get these down. I mean, all up and down Halifax. And I don't want to be looking at dead trees a year from now. I mean, Dan has one just up the street, one just down the street. You can go all the way down Peninsula, which is outside of the redevelopment area. But I just
It's a safety issue.
these are, I mean, they're overhanging major thoroughfares. And so I just hope that, yeah. I think it really should be a priority for our code people, because you can't miss them. You can't miss a dead tree as big as these are. So
I'll pass it along to specifically to code.
Yeah.
Please.
Let them know.
Okay, Reed, does that conclude? Okay.
We had one that was okay, and within a week it was dead, and we've already had it taken out.
Yeah. All right, moves on to board comments. Let me start. What I just passed out an email chain that involved the holiday weekend and bands playing at Boot Hill and I believe Main Street Station.
The doghouse.
Okay, and I didn't have to go any further, but there was a serious problem with the police enforcement. It's all outlined in the email. We've had very good response since then. You've got Paul McKittrick's response here and saying that they are going to be taking a stringent enforcement of the current codes, and the police are educating themselves and have been instructed that they are to do something about these. And also, just for information's sake, I also attached a copy of the permit. That was the permit that was issued for the event, and that permit itself expressly says in paragraph 7 that they're going to comply with the noise ordinance and the decibel limits and such, which were not enforced. So, I wanted to get that to make sure that yes, it was in the permit, and there it was. So I think we've come a long way since then. But I know we had complaints. You've got an email there from Mike Forrest, who is further down the block, and I've heard of people 3-4 blocks away listening to it like they were next door. And so I think there was a pretty much consensus that it was too loud, and I don't think we'll be hearing again that the only person who could do anything about the problem is the chief.
Or Frank.
You did notice that in item 7 of the permit application, they were supposed to be down to 65 decibel.
Yeah, that's what he just said.
Yeah, they were supposed to be down, and I was out there. I have the exact same decibel meter that the city does, or that they're supposed to have out there. And I was reading 95 plus decibels at the corner of Main Street in Halifax. 95, that's seriously loud. I mean, the windows in my house were shaking and vibrating. It was just miserable.
Well,
So-
Dan, you've been facing this, because I remember being in the COP car, oh my goodness, 7, 8, 9 years ago, and you had the same problem.
Well, we had, and then we had the noise ordinance revised, and things got a whole lot better. And then over the last 4 years or so, it's just deteriorated, and so we've gone back to the beginning, and hopefully they'll be getting it straightened out.
Yeah, well, include the doghouse, because my grandson was doing some painting in our apartment, and we're 4 buildings south of there, and he could hear every word in the song 2 nights this week.
Well, and this is
This is
one-
during the
yeah.
week.
Well, and when somebody has that, they have to make a phone call, they have to send an email. I can't tell you. The officers who were there that night I dealt with, and I'm not getting into names and such, but stood up at the Beachside Neighborhood Watch and said, we only had 1 complaint. Okay? Now, I know they had more than 1 complaint.
Because you made more than one.
No, not just because I made more than 1. But there was more, but, you know, they do react to volume and to numbers that call. And there's so many people out there that just don't think it'll do any good or just don't even try. But
A lot of them don't know where to call either.
that's true too.
You know.
I would like to say something. This may seem unrelated, but Tom Guest is no longer the president of the Main Street Merchants Association. I think I am, but.
In your spare time?
Oh, we
Yeah.
know who to contact.
And so I was contacted by Frank Heckman regarding this issue. And he was very upset about it. And per his wishes, I have called for a meeting of the Main Street Merchants Association for next week. He is going to come to the meeting and convey, I believe, your feelings about the sound infractions that occurred that night. And let me be the first to say, I also had an outdoor band at one of my venues. But I just wanted to say that Mr. Heckman has contacted us, and we're going to meet, and that will be one of the issues that we discuss. And so I just want you to know that the Merchants Association realizes the juxtaposition that we, an entertainment zone, have right alongside of very fine residential areas, and how difficult it is, but we take it very seriously, and I would like to tell you that we will report back to you next month.
Well, I appreciate that, and I heard that was in process too.
Yep.
And that's one of the reasons I think this board should be involved in review of those special permits, because from what I see is, in this case, you had the band at the Boot Hill and the band at the Main Street Station effectively 75 feet apart from each other, trying to play louder than each other. And the one turns it up, the other one turns it up, and it just, so. Anyways, but we would appreciate the efforts, and hopefully a little education will go a long ways across the board and such. And one of the things I've also asked them to look at is when they do a special permit like that is have a code enforcement officer at least on standby with a meter ready to go to keep an eye on things and such. And that way we won't even have to get into this, because and I think when one of the establishments knows they have to comply and the other one knows they have to comply, they all kind of comply. But if one's getting away with something, I think there's this attitude of I can get away with it too, or and they compete, and so everybody ratchets it up. So hopefully we can get it all down to something we can all live with, and because we went through a huge process in the noise ordinance adoption with the chamber and Main Street merchants and everything. So we have a tool. Let's just use the tool and follow by it, and we can all get along. So.
If I could just add just a couple of things to that. With the code officer, of course, anyone in the Bike Week Master Plan and Biketoberfest, if they have code violations against them in the past 3 years, they're out. It counts against them. So having the code officer and code enforcement officer there to be able to bring them before the code board. That's one good thing. And also, it's great to make a call, but sometimes, quite frankly, what it also requires is being willing to sign a complaint. Yeah. And I mean, I have forced police officers in my neighborhood when they've come out, I don't want you to, I have walked over, I want to sign a complaint. I do not want you to just tell them to quiet it down. I want to sign a complaint, because then that takes it to the next level. And I'm not saying do that right off the bat. It depends upon response, but that is always there. And then you deal with noise complaints in court.
And there's another problem is it goes into central dispatch, and if it's not a murder or something, they put that at the bottom of the pile. You know that.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think on these special event things, we need to have code enforcement in the loop. And once we get them in the loop, I think the problem is going to go away.
Yes,
So-
but if we don't holler about it, it'll
That's right.
be the same things that has been in the past.
Last comment, Gary.
Yeah, I'm sure Frank is going to represent the Beachside Neighborhood Watch because he is no longer a member of this board. You're a member of this board now, and so I think you better can share with the Main Street Merchants Association our feelings. I don't want to put Frank in an awkward situation where he's speaking for us because he's not even at the meeting here. You're here and there are members of the board here. He's a very good person to talk to the Merchants Association, but the decision can't be based on the personality of one person. We're dealing with an ordinance and a principle here, and I think you understand that nobody's looking for warfare. We just want and this was a compromise. The decibel level was a serious compromise that the Main Street Merchants bought into. We actually increased the decibel levels to make peace with the merchants on Main Street, and it really needs to be honored.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to say, during the bike events, there is a compliance officer.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's a different standard too, and we look at that as a different scenario.
Maybe go to which I think which is what
Yeah.
But Main Street Station and Doghouse is night after night after night. It's not just that weekend.
And
It's continuous with them,
and-
particularly the Doghouse.
And I have actually suggested that they go out,
Well, isn't that what they call it?
oh, the,
This on,
The Main Station or?
no, it's on the corner of Oleander and Main Street, on the east corner.
oh, yeah, the
Wise guys.
Wise Guys.
Wise guys.
Yeah.
They call it the Doghouse.
Yeah.
No, that's a
I just want to make sure, your complaints are regarding that Labor Day Saturday.
Well, that was that primary complaint, but there are also issues pertaining to, I think, Wednesday night Boot Hill. Because the Boot Hill used to have an enclosed environment, and then they opened a door on the side. And then they started
Move it out.
open the doors when they were playing, and then they moved to the outside and leaving the doors open. And so what they're doing is basically playing real loud inside and blasting it out. And I've actually talked to Paul McKittrick about, the Wednesday night issue, and first on it, go down and let the establishments know we're going to be back enforcing this. So you all need to abide, and here's the rules you need to follow. Give them a heads up, and then, I said, all it takes is an hour for a code enforcement officer on a Wednesday evening or whatever to make a trip down there and be a little proactive and let them know, and, they either get into compliance or then they get in trouble. But, yeah, it's far more than just the special event. It's gotten carried away through the week, too.
And you see the Doghouse.
Well, yeah, it's more nights a week than that.
And a lot of it depends on how the wind blows and stuff, too.
Yeah.
But,
Environmental factors.
yeah, they just need to,
Monday and Tuesday, he was, Sunday, he was painting his department, and I'll find out how far it is to go and regular shade was over there.
Okay.
Because it was so low.
well, thank you, everybody. I think we did a lot of work in a little over 3 hours tonight. So, stand adjourned.
Not seeing it.